Chapter 389. Fang Zhao didn't request absolute secrecy for bringing curly hair along this time. There were so many people in the program team, so it was impossible to completely keep it a secret. Hiding it would instead make people more suspicious. However, Fang Zhao requested the program team to reduce curly hair's presence during the recording process. Fang Zhao's request was added to the agreement, and the program team readily agreed. In any case, from their point of view, it was just a dog and wasn't the main point. The main point was that the 5 special guests were about to experience the arduous process of living on an impoverished planet. Great-grandfather Fang and great-grandmother Fang watched as the flying transport carrying Fang Zhao and the others left the spaceport with the others who were sending them off. Fang Zhao arranged for people to take care of them and send the 2 elders back to Yinzhou. Great-grandfather Fang started recommending this program to others upon returning to Yinzhou. Although there was still some time before production and broadcast, hadn't the officials already started promoting it? Great-grandfather Fang couldn't fall behind. Elsewhere, after the flying transport left Earth, they switched to another flying transport at the spaceport and headed for their destination. This wasn't Fang Zhao's first time leaving Earth, but every time he did so, it felt wonderful. Humanity's footsteps were still unceasingly moving forward. After the 100 years of calamity, humans knew how to prepare for a rainy day. Once they stepped out, they could set their sights even further. Fang Zhao didn't have high hopes that this sort of poverty alleviation program would be able to bring about any major changes to those impoverished planets, but it was better than nothing. He would first take a look at the situation and help out as much as he could. It has already come to this point. Can you at least tell us where we are going this time? Wu Tianhao said in a huff. The program team members didn't mind Wu Tianhao's tone. If they were in his shoes, they wouldn't feel good either. Director? A staff member looked at the program team's director. The director coughed lightly and nodded. Planet Boo, as he spoke, he got someone to turn on the projector and introduce Planet Boo's situation. What kind of place was Planet Boo? Barren, desolate, and mediocre among the planets, waiting to be developed. Although it wasn't at the bottom of the development sequence, it was still quite far behind. Earlier on, it had actually been ranked ahead of Planet Baiji. It was only when Planet Baiji had taken off due to its energy or deposits that it had been pushed to the back. Looking at the map, 70 to 80% of the planet's surface was covered by oceans and deserts. In terms of resources and scenery, it was far inferior to Planet Baiji and Planet Y. Furthermore, compared to other planets that were more suitable for habitation, Planet Boo had many areas with low pressure and low oxygen levels. Many newcomers would develop discomfort similar to altitude sickness. This was also the reason why the production team valued the guest's physique. The contracted guests had all been arranged to go through a physical examination, and only those who met the requirements could come over. Planet Boo wasn't treated as a planet for immigration. Although its living conditions were a notch worse than Planet Baiji and Planet Y, it was safe and simple. Places with vile climates were avoided, and there was sufficient free space within the safety zone where the base was located. But at the same time, because Baiji was ranked at the back, it had not had its turn to develop, and its current conditions were still very tough. It was impossible to go online as one pleased, and the cost of setting up a communications framework was even higher than on Planet Baiji. Thus, the program team had said from the start that this would be a recorded broadcast and there would be no live broadcasts. The 5 honored guests who watched Planet Boo's introduction and video, Wu Tianhao, who was ready to show off his skills in a live broadcast of beating monsters and pretending to be a hero. The production team tricked me. Barbara, who envisioned taking beautiful photos and videos. The production team tricked me. Midasi, who had listened to his elder's suggestion to come here for a vacation to improve his sleep, stared blankly. My family is screwing me over. Mentally prepared, Zero wrote an email to the Liuzhou governor. My dad is screwing me over again. Your adorable, smiling, angelic grandson is about to suffer a hellish torture. Fang Zhao, who didn't have high expectations for the location. The introduction said that the base had a lot of freedom. It should be a good place to walk the dog. When they finally saw the full picture of Planet Boo, 4 of the 5 honored guests were listless. Only Fang Zhao was carefully flipping through the information on Planet Boo. Every honored guest had brought some supplies to be delivered to Boo Base's garrison. However, they didn't need to personally deliver the supplies as there were professionals in charge of receiving them at the spaceport. This spaceport is too small. Zero gestured with his hand. It's so small. It's really poor. The total number of people isn't even half of what Planet Baiji had in the early days. Midasi was disappointed, but also curious. This was the first time he was truly going on a long journey. Are there really no hunting conditions? Wu Tianhao was still unresigned. The program team replied with a smile. First-timers will roughly need 3 to 7 days to adapt. We have set aside 7 days of preparation time for everyone, someone from the program team said. The person who received them was the base's military officer, Colonel Song Ping. He looked rather young and was a little tanned. His attitude was modest yet somewhat unyielding. Zero's nose twitched as he took a sniff when they arrived at the base's airport. Barbara was absent-mindedly painting her nails. What did that dog nose of yours smell again? Strange smell. Zero reacted. Who are you scolding? Seeing that a quarrel was about to break out, the program team hurriedly diverted their attention. The base has already prepared rooms for everyone. Everyone, bring your belongings. Don't forget your valuables. Nanfeng hurriedly carried Curly Hair and followed beside Feng Zhao. From his point of view, besides boss, the most valuable thing was Curly Hair. He had to look after Curly Hair well. If Curly Hair got lost, who knew if someone would secretly catch him and eat him up? After entering the base, Colonel Song Ping gave them an electronic map that marked out the areas where they could move around. Generally speaking, as long as they followed the base's regulations, there wouldn't be much danger, and there would be a lot of freedom. This was also the reason why the program team had chosen Bu Base. If it were any other place, even though the conditions would be better, there would be too many restrictions on their activities and filming wouldn't be as carefree. Feng Zhao stayed in the rooms that the base had arranged for them. Every special guest had a suite, and their assistants and bodyguards lived close by. This had been discussed between the program team and the base to prevent any mishaps from happening. Nothing could happen to these special guests. Feng Zhao's side had the fewest people. Nanfeng instructed Zuiyu and Yin Bia to tidy up the room and install all sorts of facilities that could improve the living conditions. He had heard that the temperature difference between day and night was huge. The base's conditions were limited and might not be able to take care of everything. As someone who had served on Planet Baiji before, Nanfeng originally didn't fuss over such things. Feng Zhao himself had said that he didn't have high requirements for his living quarters. However, Nanfeng couldn't stand watching the other 4 special guests busying themselves. Their side can't be lacking either. After all, the base didn't say that they weren't allowed to install these themselves. On the first day of arriving at Bu Base, many people in the program team weren't used to it. They only felt better after the base sent over breathing masks. There were also some who had strong reactions and were sent for medical treatment. There weren't any major problems, but it would take longer for them to adapt than others. The base's breathing masks were manufactured according to the local environment and were meant to help first-timers get through the adaptation period. As for the 5 special guests, breathing masks were also sent over. Somewhere on the base, Colonel Song Ping, who was in charge of receiving the program team, was called over to report on the situation. Base Commanding Officer Flemington, who had just returned from outside, loosened his shoulders, sat on a chair, and stretched. He closed his eyes to hide his sleepiness and asked somewhat helplessly, "How are things over there? Have the breathing masks been sent over?" "They have been sent over. The others are fine, but the 5 special guests aren't wearing them," Song Ping reported truthfully. "Oh." Flemington opened his eyes and looked over with interest. "Tell me about it." Former professional athlete Midasi is still adapting well and didn't have much of a reaction after arriving at the base. However, he went to the sports stadium to play basketball for 10 minutes before going back to lie down. Flemington's lips curled into a smile. The Mars family's youngster is rather impressive. He has just arrived and hasn't gone through the adaptation period, yet he still dares to exercise vigorously. Continue. Wu Tianhao's degree of adaptation is about the same as Midasi's, but he said that he wants to challenge his body's limits. He didn't wear a breathing mask and went outside to practice boxing. He is now meditating. Flemington's smile deepened. He has some characteristics of Tengzhou's Wu family. What about the others? Zero's adaptability isn't as good as the first two. He received treatment the moment he entered the base. Song Ping paused slightly and said with a complicated tone, "His emotions are rather intense. His breathing mask fell to the side and he is cursing his father now." "Oh my." Flemington was delighted. "He's in good spirits. Hasn't this fellow's rebellious phase passed yet? Continue." Barbara, although she isn't used to it either, when we sent over a breathing mask, she rejected it very bluntly. "Reason?" Flemington asked. Song Ping opened his mouth and said awkwardly, "Ugly rejection." Flemington. Such a pretentious attitude. You still think the mask doesn't look good? If you don't like it, then forget it. Take back the mask. Oh right, where's Fang Zhao? The main point is him. How is his degree of adaptation? Song Ping had a strange expression. Fang Zhao went out to walk the dog. Flemington. This was the first time he had heard of such a situation. He was actually in the mood to walk the dog here? No, the main point was that Fang Zhao even brought the dog along. That dog didn't show any signs of discomfort. And then? Flemington asked. I heard from the patrolling soldiers that he was rather happy walking the dog and has no intention of returning for the time being. Chapter 390. Fang Zhao didn't bring curly hair too far. He followed the map provided by the base and walked around the areas where they could freely move around. He wanted to understand the terrain and lifestyle here. Bu Base had a large area, and they had a wide range of activities. Occasionally, they would run into patrolling soldiers, but they seemed more relaxed and didn't seem as tense as the soldiers at Baiji's outpost. This place was very dull, but it was also peaceful. Curly Hair's adaptability was very strong. The low-pressure and low-oxygen environment didn't cause him any inconvenience. The barren sand didn't make him lose interest either. He seemed to like this place very much. There was no one else around, and Fang Zhao didn't leash Curly Hair. At this moment, Curly Hair was running around happily on the sand. He was also very interested in the various insects and animals under the sand. Fang Zhao observed for a while and didn't see Curly Hair show any signs of discomfort, so he let it be. After strolling one round outside, Fang Zhao brought Curly Hair back to the base. The next day, Fang Zhao met Wu Tianhao and Midasi at the base's cafeteria. After the previous day, the two of them seemed to have adapted even better. However, Midasi still looked as though he hadn't had enough sleep. It wasn't just Wu Tianhao and Midasi. Zero and Barbara also went out for a walk today. However, the two of them didn't eat at the cafeteria and ate their own food. The program team sighed when they saw the 5 people going out for a walk. Genes are really a very powerful thing. No wonder they are descendants of great generals. Their adaptability is really strong. Genes meant potential. As long as they didn't waste this potential, they had an advantage over others. Wasting was another matter. We can't compare the other 4. After all, they are descendants of great generals. Their genes are awesome, but what about Fang Zhao? He even has a background in art. We can't compare to the other 4. We have to learn from him. The director started feeding chicken soup for the soul to the other staff members of the program team. Actually, the director felt helpless. This was the first time that all the invited guests were more adaptable than the staff members. He reckoned that by the time the guests could start filming, they wouldn't be able to keep up. With this problem in mind, the director adjusted the arrangements. They couldn't officially start filming, but the guests could be mobilized first. The director gathered the 5 guests together and started mobilizing them. The instruction manual that was sent to you has recorded a lot of important information. Edible and poisonous things are all in there. It's best not to touch anything that isn't recorded. Thus, non-professionals shouldn't touch things that weren't recorded. At first, Zero listened attentively, but as he listened, he began to slack off. It was hard to tell from his face, but in fact, this was what he was thinking. Previously, he made more money by frying wild ginger, but it was not sustainable. Ginger was fine, but it was better to fry garlic. Since Fang Zhao had brought a dog over, I can also bring one next time. I don't like small dogs. Big dogs are more impressive. When can I get through to you? I'm going to complain. Zero's brain jumped from ginger to dog in 2 minutes, and then quickly jumped to other places. After emphasizing the points that needed attention, the director talked about the key points of poverty alleviation. There was a saying in the old era, "Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime." The current poverty alleviation was generally based on discovering the shining points of impoverished areas and magnifying them to further improve the quality of life in impoverished areas. However, it sounded simple, but how many people could actually do it? What's more, this was originally an entertainment program. They didn't really expect to find any highlights. They just wanted to use the program to let everyone know about the hardships here, so that they would consider this place more when they donate. Of course, regardless of what they thought in their hearts or how cruel the reality was, the director wouldn't be so realistic when mobilizing people. Watch more, listen more, move around more, and understand more. Given everyone's experience and intelligence, you should be able to discover the shining points here, the director concluded. Wu Tianhao, watch more, listen more? Definitely. With my eyes and ears, I can see 6 roads and hear 8 directions. Midasi, move around more, understand more? Seems like the amount of exercise is quite high. Zero, my intelligence? Barbara, shining point? Fang Zhao, a little difficult. The director was satisfied when he saw the 5 special guests looking pensive. It seemed like the 5 special guests had already understood what he was saying. After clapping his hands to get everyone to come back to their senses, the director said, "As some of our program team staff have not adapted yet, we can't officially start work. Therefore, today, Colonel Song Ping will be bringing everyone around to have a look." Planet Bu's personnel turnover rate was higher than that of Planet Baiji and Planet Y. After all, the environment here wasn't suitable for ordinary people to live in. It was fine for a few years, but some people wouldn't be able to take it if it was too long. Therefore, soldiers stationed on a base wouldn't be stationed for more than 10 years before being transferred elsewhere. Colonel Song Ping had previously served on the exploration ship Fomalhaut before being transferred here for a period of time. His military merits were already sufficient, and he would be able to rise up after a little more experience. This was his 2nd year on Planet Bu. After 3 years at most, he would be transferred to other places. Basically, it would be those planets at the top of the development sequence. Although he didn't plan on staying on Planet Bu for long, Song Ping was still rather cordial to the special guests. Even though he couldn't change Planet Bu's current development situation, the special guests could at least bring some financial support. As this was the program team's 2nd day on Planet Bu, Midasi took into consideration that the few of them were just getting used to the environment and couldn't overexert themselves. Therefore, he specially arranged for a vehicle from the base to drive the few of them out. Along the way, he introduced the uses of the various regions. As he gazed at the desert in the distance, Midasi pointed at his feet and asked, "Is there oil beneath the desert? I have seen some records of the old era that mention this." In the old era, oil was a very important source of energy. Song Ping nodded his head. Many places on Planet Bu have detected it, but it isn't necessary. For daily use, the heat radiation provided by the stars is sufficient. It is more convenient, and the cost is low. Our base mostly uses photovoltaic power generation. As for higher-grade energy requirements, we can directly use the energy ores that are transported over. Later on, Song Ping brought them to look at the farmland. Every year, the conscripts that are sent over will be assigned to work on the various farmland, grow crops, or improve the soil. You can grow things here? Zero pointed at the monotonous and desolate desert and didn't dare to believe it. Yes, as long as there is water, it can be grown. The pipelines have already been laid long ago. Within the planned scope, the water can still keep up with the demand, Song Ping replied. Very quickly, they arrived at the farmland region. Crops of different heights grew sparsely in the improved soil. It doesn't look like they are growing very well. Midasi didn't know much about farming, but he could at least tell if the crops were growing well. Song Ping chuckled. The output isn't high, but at least we won't starve to death. Wu Tianhao thought of something and asked impatiently, "Big Brother Ping, do you eat bugs?" Back on Planet Baiji, we used to eat bugs. These are such big bugs. Bugs? We eat them too, but we eat very little. There aren't many bugs here that can be eaten. They are either too small or too hard to catch. The cost of catching them is high, so we might as well spend the time farming. Here, we mainly eat crops that we grow ourselves. Sometimes, we catch some edible ones from the sea to improve our diet, but these situations are rare. As for large land animals, because their numbers are small, they basically don't pose a threat to the base. Most of them are included in the list of protected primo species and can't be eaten. Not only can we not eat them, but we also have to help them if we see them in danger. Thus, on our base, we eat vegetables more often. Other times, we drink nutrient solutions to replenish our energy and essential nutrients. Song Ping was telling them all this to tell them that over here, they could forget about eating meat. Since they were here, they had to eat vegetables like everyone else. Zero rubbed his chin and nodded. I understand what you mean. In the old era, there was a phrase called, "Let the dead rest in peace." Song Ping. Wu Tianhao was worthy of being the one who had spent the most time with Zero. Once he heard Zero's words, he understood what Zero was trying to say. What you are trying to say is when in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? Zero clapped his hands. Yes, that's it. Song Ping. I almost fucking doubted my ability to express myself. We can cultivate more crops that are suitable for this place, Midasi said. Find more researchers, and we will definitely be able to do it. Song Ping shook his head. Researchers? We can't hire them. The pay is low, the conditions are poor, the species aren't abundant, and the land isn't fertile enough. We can't attract any research talents. Planet Baiji can still attract quite a number of researchers. In this aspect, we can't compare. Of course, if you guys are willing to help, you can hire more people. They aren't the kind of people who fish for fame. They are truly knowledgeable and capable people. It doesn't matter if they have a bad temper. Song Ping was just making a casual remark. He didn't have any hopes that an entertainment program would really be able to hire those capable researchers. Let me bring you guys into the farm to take a look. Song Ping opened up an area's protective net and brought Fang Zhao and the others in. He didn't forget to talk about Bu Base's advantages. The students who serve here don't need to mine. Even though farming is a little tiring, it is safer than Planet Baiji. Just this point alone makes many conscripts more willing to come here. As he spoke, Song Ping glanced at Fang Zhao. He had been transferred over from the exploration ship Fomalhaut and had heard that Fang Zhao had applied for the Fomalhaut and Arcturus during his military service. Unfortunately, he had been rejected. Afterward, Fang Zhao had chosen Planet Baiji, which had harsh conditions for his military service. Afterward, no one had expected that Planet Baiji would discover a high-grade energy or deposit and prosper. Many people knew that Fang Zhao had discovered a new energy or deposit. However, everyone also knew that even without Fang Zhao, other people would have discovered it. It would just have taken slightly longer. Even so, there were still quite a number of people who saw Fang Zhao as a lucky factor. Bu Base's commanding officer, Flemington, had agreed to collaborate with the program team on account of Fang Zhao. Otherwise, Flemington wouldn't have dared to take the risk. Flemington would be promoted after another year or two. He wasn't willing to have any mishaps happen while he was in command. Song Ping didn't just focus on other matters. He introduced the crops here to Fang Zhao and the others. We can't always rely on supplies on such a large planet. Self-reliance is the way to gain a foothold. Only then can we truly stand firm. At the very least, we won't starve to death if an accident occurs with our supplies. We need to control pests in the fields, but insecticides have limited effects. We can't possibly poison ourselves to death just to kill pests. Song Ping brought up a few images for Fang Zhao and the others to see. He introduced the commonly seen pests and animals that harmed crops, especially these. Song Ping pointed at one of the images and gritted his teeth. These are the most harmful species in the fields. A large part of the reason why production is low is because of them. They can eat a lot. If we aren't careful, they will harm a large area and make everyone's hard work go to waste. The animal that Song Ping was talking about had a long and narrow body with well-developed claws and tail. There were also segments of scales on its body, and a mature one was the size of a palm. These things are highly resistant to drugs and are nimble in the sand. It is very difficult to capture them without the aid of traps. They are a type of organism that gives the base a headache. Fortunately, their toxicity is weak and isn't too dangerous to ordinary people. To protect the crops, We have set up a protective net, but the net isn't always closed. The fields require a large number of people to take care of them. Every time the net is opened, some will sneak in. We also send people to exterminate the pests regularly, but it is basically impossible to clean them all up. They move too quickly in the fields. Even if the exterminators find traces of them, they are worried about harming the crops. Their hands are tied, and exterminating the pests becomes more difficult. Feng Zhao looked at the image. It looks a little like a lizard. It just looks a little similar. Actually, the internal structure is different. There are specimens in the base. I'll show them to you when we get back. If the exterminators catch one next time, I will dissect it for you to see, Song Ping said. Can't we catch it now? Wu Tianhao rubbed his palms together, eager to give it a try. It's not easy to catch. If you want to catch it, you have to get a professional to guide you and use tools. You also can't harm the crops. In any case, catching them isn't as simple as you think. Song Ping had just finished speaking when he saw curly hair rush over like the wind, bite something in the soil, drag it out, and smash it a few times. Then, he tossed it up, jumped up to catch it, smashed it a few times, and tossed it up again. Are you talking about that? Feng Zhao pointed at the thing that was tossed up and asked. Song Ping. Seems like it. Curly Hair held one in his mouth and played with it excitedly. Then, he brought it in front of Feng Zhao as if he was asking for praise. Feng Zhao looked at what Curly Hair was holding in his mouth, then at Song Ping. Chapter 391. After placing the one he was holding at Feng Zhao's feet, Curly Hair rushed back to the field and brought back another one in the blink of an eye. Feng Zhao took out a glove and put it on. He picked up the thing by his feet and shook it a few times. It's a little different. Feng Zhao placed the two that Curly Hair had brought back on the ground. Even if these two hadn't been smashed to death by Curly Hair, they were at least half dead. Song Ping was standing guard at the side with some tools. Song Ping wasn't soft-hearted when dealing with pests. Midacy squatted down to observe the new species on the ground curiously. Wu Tianhao watched as Curly Hair went to catch pests again. His hands itched to give it a try. Song Ping saw that everyone was unwilling to give it a try and said, Go on. Be careful not to step on the crops. Understood. Wu Tianhao specially went to the warehouse and rummaged through it for tools he found useful before rushing over to the field. Zero followed suit. He took some farming tools that he didn't even know what they were and ran to the fields to join in the fun. Barbara found a stool for herself. After wiping it a dozen times, she sat there elegantly. Going down to the field to catch pests wasn't something a young noble lady like her would do. Half an hour later, Wu Tianhao tumbled a few times and finally caught one with great difficulty. He even destroyed a few crops in the process. Midacy was concerned about the plants in the field. He couldn't move his hands and feet and didn't manage to catch a single one. Zero didn't care about the plants in the field, but he wasn't as experienced as Wu Tianhao. It looked more like he was being played by pests rather than weeding out pests. Seeing this, Song Ping hurriedly called the others back. If this continued, who knew how many plants would be harmed? The ones in the field had been planted with great difficulty. Compared to Wu Tianhao's performance, Song Ping looked at Curly Hair, who was running back with an unknown number of pests in his mouth. If he hadn't tried it himself, Song Ping would have thought that pests were so easy to catch. Wu Tianhao looked at the one he had caught, and then at the ones Curly Hair had caught. He had no choice but to admit that he wasn't even comparable to a dog. But looking at Midacy and Zero, they aren't even comparable to me. Wu Tianhao immediately felt comforted. Song Ping looked at Feng Zhao enviously. So powerful, he must be a Muzhou dog. He had been eyeing the working dog breeds bred in Muzhou for a long time. He had heard that they were very impressive. It was a pity that it was too difficult to apply for them here, and they could not compete with those from the big military districts. You guessed wrong. Wu Tianhao laughed heartily. That is a Yinzhou dog. Wu Tianhao stretched out 2 fingers. It's worth 200 million. Song Ping, who had been prepared to borrow Feng Zhao's dog, shuddered and gave up on the idea. He couldn't afford it. What if he accidentally spoils it? How much would that cost? In less than half an hour, Feng Zhao had laid out a small area on the ground in front of him. It was filled with the pests that Curly Hair had caught. After picking up another one, Curly Hair didn't run out again. That's all for now. As Feng Zhao spoke, he took advantage of the fact that everyone's attention was on the pests on the ground to quickly shove something that seemed to be the tip of a pest's tail into Curly Hair's mouth. You don't even know how to lick it clean. Song Ping's attention was completely drawn to the pests on the ground. He did not notice Feng Zhao's movements. At this moment, he was both frustrated and happy. These are already not easy. Song Ping wondered if he should award Curly Hair with a Pest Exterminator medal as he watched the creatures that had wreaked havoc on the fields on normal days. Song Ping went to the warehouse to look for tools. He picked out a fat one and dissected it. He explained its body structure to Feng Zhao and the others and proved that it was because of its body structure that it could move nimbly in the sand. Under normal circumstances, it was very difficult to catch. Curly Hair was an exception. After dissecting it, Song Ping agreed with Zero and Wu Tianhao's suggestion to not waste resources and make the best use of them. Song Ping roasted all these pests. There wasn't much meat and it didn't taste good. Eating was secondary. Taking pictures was the main point. Wu Tianhao and the others took many pictures and were waiting to go online to show off on their social media platforms. After that, Song Ping also introduced them to some small factories. Of course, there were definitely more factories on Planet Boo than these. There were still some that couldn't be shown to them. This included many things that Song Ping told them, which might not be completely true. Feng Zhao was well aware of this. For example, the vehicles and other machinery used on the base didn't require petroleum as an energy source. But what about other things? What about the chemical industry? The smell that Zero had asked about when he had just arrived at the base was related to those. However, Feng Zhao saw that the people of Bu Base didn't explain and didn't have any intention of explaining, so Feng Zhao pretended not to know. There were too many confidential things involved. The chemical industry, military, and many other things weren't open to the public. Planet Boo wasn't an exception. Every base was the same. They would only show visitors the most basic things. The rest wasn't something that outsiders could come into contact with. How could the things that Song Ping had shown them be the only things that could protect this planet and be stationed here for a long period of time? Wow, what's that? Wu Tianhao's eyes lit up as he pointed at a vehicle parked in a warehouse. It's a vehicle used by the soldiers stationed nearby to transport small goods, Song Ping explained. It looks a little like the dune buggy we used to play at the beach some time ago, right, Zero? Wu Tianhao asked. It looks a little like it, but it's loaded with weapons. Zero looked at the equipment on the vehicle and touched the wide wheels. The wheels are different from the ones we used before. It looks even more impressive. Big Brother Ping, what is this vehicle called? From Wu Tianhao's point of view, this sort of vehicle should be named something wild or mighty like Wild Dog, Wild Bull, or T-Rex, right? We call it Little Electric Donkey, Song Ping said. Electric scooter? Little Electric Donkey it is then. Can I try it out? Wu Tianhao rubbed his hands. Sure. There were 5 vehicles in the warehouse. Song Ping locked the weapon systems on the vehicles before letting them use them. Wu Tianhao and Zero were both veterans. They drove the vehicle out and started running in the desert. After Midasi consulted Song Ping, he slowly drove the vehicle out of the warehouse. Feng Zhao you. Song Ping watched Midasi drive off and was about to ask Feng Zhao when he saw Curly Hair jump into the vehicle. You can bring the dog along without any worries? The vehicle didn't have any protective covers. What if the vehicle jolted the dog out? It was 200 million. Feng Zhao glanced at Curly Hair, who was sitting on the cargo seat and wagging his tail, and told Song Ping, it's fine. He's not afraid. Song Ping. But I'm afraid. As he watched Feng Zhao drive off, Song Ping felt as though his heart was hanging by a thread. Sighing, Song Ping glanced at the last special guest in the warehouse. Barbara stretched out her hand that had a ring on it, adjusted her flowery sun hat, and put on her sunglasses. She smiled elegantly and said, I'm taking a walk nearby. A young lady from a noble family wouldn't drive such a violent vehicle. Watching Barbara lift her skirt and leave with her bodyguards, Song Ping sighed again and got the soldiers to follow and protect the 5 special guests. Feng Zhao drove out. He didn't race like Wu Tianhao and Zero. Instead, He maintained a moderate speed and surveyed his surroundings. Further ahead, there wasn't a single plant as far as the eye could see. Gusts of wind blew past, stirring up large amounts of sand. Curly Hair stuck out his tongue and licked the sand playfully. About 20 minutes later, they received a notification from Song Ping. Emergency notification. We have to return. There's a storm approaching. Fang Xiao didn't delay after receiving the notification. He turned the vehicle around and drove back. Zero and Wu Tianhao had run far away, but because of the high speed of the vehicle, they returned quickly and arrived ahead of Fang Xiao. However, when he stopped the car, Zero showed off his amazing drifting parking skills. A beautiful arc streaked past, and Song Ping, Barbara, and the others who were standing there were blown up by the sand. Song Ping was fine. He was already used to it. Every time he went out, he would be covered in sand. Barbara couldn't take it anymore. She let out a loud cry and patted the sand off her body. There wasn't any place to change, and she hadn't brought any clean clothes. She looked like she wanted to kill someone. Seeing that a commotion was about to break out, Song Ping hurriedly diverted her attention. The wind is getting stronger. We have to leave quickly. Get in the car. The electric donkey entered the warehouse, and it was locked. The party hurriedly drove off. After driving for a while, Barbara cleaned the dust off her face in front of the mirror and noticed that one of the rings on her hand had fallen. "My diamond ring!" Barbara shouted. Every accessory Barbara wore was custom-made, and the jewels hanging from them were also expensive. Barbara liked the design of the rings the most. They were all unique. She searched the vehicle anxiously but couldn't find it. It must have fallen off when I was patting the sand off my clothes. It was always on my hand before that. Barbara glared at Zero with a murderous look. Song Ping felt his head hurt even more. The things that this bunch of little ancestors wore weren't cheap. Then should I send someone back to look for it? It was impossible for everyone to turn around and go back to look for it. They could only predict the speed at which the desert's climate changed, but they couldn't be completely accurate. They had always been prepared in advance. What if they went back now and something unexpected happened? Barbara looked at the weather chart on the screen and said with a gloomy face, "No need. Let's return to base first." It was too risky to go back now. She was distressed that she had lost the ring, but she wouldn't let the soldiers risk their lives to help her find it. If I lost it, then I lost it. Zero will compensate me. Barbara's eyes were cold, and she glared daggers at Zero. Zero was so angry that he almost jumped out of his seat. "You lost it yourself. What does it have to do with me? Look at who's wearing such fancy clothes and so many accessories. Pretentious. If you didn't have eyes and threw sand all over me, would I have lost my precious ring? Huh. Then it must have been your ring that gave you the chance to slip away. Look, why didn't you lose your other rings?" Song Ping was getting a headache from all the bickering. Fortunately, Barbara didn't insist on going back to look for it, and everyone returned safely to base. The two were still bickering after entering the base. "How about this? Let's wait for the storm to pass before we go back to look for it," Song Ping said. Actually, he also knew that in that kind of place, the chances of finding a small ring after the storm had passed were slim to none. TCH, it's just a small ring. Look at how stingy she is. Zero's mouth twitched. Diamond ring. The only big diamond ring in the world. Barbara emphasized. Zero thought of something and changed the topic. The only one in the world, right? Wait. After saying this, Zero went back to his room for a while, then came out and threw a box at Barbara. Compensation. After throwing the box, Zero quickly went back to his room and locked the door. Barbara looked at the box that Zero had thrown at her warily. She stood back and let her assistant open it. In the room, her manager asked Zero curiously, "What's in that box? There's really a diamond ring?" Zero looked as if he had gotten his revenge and replied, "Why would she want a big diamond ring? Just give her a big garlic. And it's planet-wise special garlic, the only one in the world. Even I can't bear to eat it." Manager, are you courting death? In the rest area for the program team staff. The director was holding a cup of hot tea as he discussed the script with the others. He did not expect these important guests to follow the script completely, nor did he expect to give them any personality settings. He only hoped that they would follow the general outline of the script. Didn't General Renault say so? Let Zero come over and suffer a little. Feeling the sandstorm, eating vegetarian for a period, and experiencing the hardships and dull life here was considered tough for this bunch of rich young masters. How are things over there? The director asked a staff member. Seems okay, the person said, a little weak. What kind of answer is that? If it's okay, then it's okay. If it's not okay, then it's not okay. What do you mean by seems okay? The director wasn't satisfied with the staff member's perfunctory reply. The staff member didn't argue and showed the director the information he had received today. A series of photos came into view. In the first photo, the 5 special guests were surrounding a simple table, watching Colonel Song Ping dissect a creature on the table. It was said to be a pest in the farmland. In the second photo, the 5 special guests were surrounding a large grill. On top of the grill were pests that had been cleaned up. Even through the photo, one could hear the sizzling sound of oil and the aroma of roasted meat. The program team staff swallowed their saliva after a whole day of vegetarian eating. Further on, there were photos of Zero and the others racing excitedly in the desert. They even made silly peace signs to the camera. Even the dog beside Feng Zhao happily stuck out its tongue and licked the sand. The program team staff who hadn't fully adapted to the environment and had been cooped up in the base all day. How envious. Is this considered finding joy in hardship? A staff member asked weakly. Director, hee hee. How is it hardship? It really looks like a vacation. Everyone is having so much fun. If this goes on, they won't be able to complete General Renault's mission. Patting the script in his hands, the director regained his confidence. Let them relax first. Starting tomorrow, we will follow the program team's arrangements. Those who can move, move. We will start shooting ahead of schedule. Chapter 392. After Song Ping sent Feng Zhao and the others back to the base, he went to report to Commander Flemington. Did Feng Zhao hear anything useful? This was what Flemington was most concerned about. No, Song Ping replied. Flemington couldn't help but reveal a disappointed look, but this outcome was within his expectations, and he had been mentally prepared. Indeed, the rumors are exaggerated. Flemington sighed and waved his hands. Forget it. Just bring this bunch of people out to have some fun. If they are happy, they will be willing to fork out the money. Were they easy to bring along? Song Ping recalled the performance of the few special guests today and reported truthfully, not bad. Although they are a little spoiled and willful, their character isn't as bad as others say. Zero and Wu Tianhao were having fun playing with cars and even said they wanted to donate a fleet of cars to us. Haha, that's good. The disappointment in Flemington's heart dissipated. As long as the special guests didn't cause trouble and were willing to donate some things to the base, this collaboration with the program team would be a huge win. Execute Plan A. Flemington's tone was relaxed. When the program team had sought cooperation, Flemington had discussed with the other high-ranking officers of the base and formulated 2 plans. If the guests performed well, they would try their best to cooperate. This was the plan he had mentioned earlier. If the special guests threw a tantrum and caused trouble, they would be tough and let this bunch of people suffer a little. This was Plan B. From the looks of it, everything was going smoothly. Flemington was naturally willing to take the route of Plan A. This way, the program team could film happily and they could relax. Everyone would get what they needed, and it would be a win-win situation. After Song Ping left, Flemington was in a good mood as he browsed through the photos and videos Song Ping had submitted. They were all performances of the 5 special guests today. However, as he browsed through them, Flemington's expression changed. Those neatly spread out like salted fish in the photos were the pests that the base viewed as the hardest to exterminate. Flemington thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him. He rubbed his eyes and enlarged the photos to take a closer look. That's right. Those were the pests that had given him a headache. When Song Ping had said that Feng Zhao's dog worth 200 million was an expert at catching pests, Flemington had thought that Song Ping was joking and had used some exaggerated rhetoric. Unexpectedly, the truth was even more exaggerated than the description. Night fell on the base. Sand and dust filled the sky outside. The storm had yet to pass, but it was rather quiet inside the base. There weren't many entertainment facilities in the base, nor were there any rich entertainment activities. They couldn't surf the internet freely. So many people went to bed early. Feng Zhao had gained quite a lot today. After walking around outside, he had some inspiration. After scribbling down a few drafts in his notebook, he lay down to rest. He didn't fall asleep. Instead, he quietly listened to the various sounds. Although the soundproofing of the base was pretty good, as long as Feng Zhao concentrated and listened, he could still hear the various movements of the sandstorm. That was a rhythm that couldn't be created by human beings. It was the rhythm of nature. Wind, sand, rocks, the earth, and the solid barriers created by humans. It was the sound of all living things interacting. All the sounds were divided into musical notes in Feng Zhao's mind, forming a tune unique to Planet Boo. Suddenly, Feng Zhao noticed a small, unfamiliar note that was hard to catch. That sound was so weak that it was like an ant under the feet of a lively crowd. It could be crushed at any moment, but it still struggled and luckily broke through. The rhythm of the combination of the strong and the weak was like a piece of time that had been measured by the most precise ruler in the world. It repeated itself tirelessly, like a summoning, but also like a plea. What exactly was that? Just as Feng Zhao was deep in thought, Curly Hair ran over to Feng Zhao's bedside. Feng Zhao opened his eyes and looked at Curly Hair. Curly Hair whimpered softly and stared at Feng Zhao with those seemingly innocent dog eyes. He was so serious that his tail didn't even wag. Curly Hair's behavior meant that he had a request. In the past, when he was at home, that meant that he wanted to play games. But now, Feng Zhao didn't think that Curly Hair had called him in the middle of the night because he wanted to play games. Was he asking for a beating by making a fuss about wanting to play games in the middle of the night? You heard it too? That sound? Feng Zhao asked. He didn't know why, but he had a feeling that Curly Hair had definitely heard that sound. Woof. Curly Hair wagged his tail and spun around on the spot. Then, he ran a few steps towards the door and turned back to look at Feng Zhao. Feng Zhao remained seated on the bedside and didn't move. He was deep in thought. He didn't know what that sound was, but it probably wasn't a threat. If it was any other important information, the base should have been able to catch this signal. If even the base couldn't catch it, but he heard it. Whether it was a blessing or a curse, Feng Zhao himself couldn't be sure. That time on Planet Baiji had seemed glorious, but Feng Zhao knew that many people had their eyes on him. Many researchers wanted to study his ears, and he believed that there were definitely people who had discussed how Feng Zhao's body would go if he died of natural or accidental causes. This time, Feng Zhao could completely pretend that nothing had happened and follow the program team and the base's arrangements. He could finish recording this episode and then go back to his life. Seeing that Feng Zhao wasn't moving, Curly Hair ran back and tugged at Feng Zhao's trousers with his paw. Feng Zhao suddenly smiled as he looked at Curly Hair. He got up and put on his clothes, picked up Curly Hair, and patted his head. Hide well. Song Ping was watching Founding Era when he glanced at the time. It was already getting late. He was going to sleep after watching this episode. But before the episode had finished broadcasting, Song Ping received a call from Feng Zhao. Sound? What sound? Wait. Tell me in detail. Song Ping couldn't be bothered with watching his drama and hurriedly asked. His heart was filled with boundless anticipation and nervousness. Elsewhere, Commander Flemington had just finished handling today's affairs and was in a good mood, so he had rested a little early. He was sleeping soundly when he was woken up by a phone call. It was rare for him to have a good night's sleep. Flemington's face darkened when he was suddenly woken up. However, he knew that a call at this time would definitely be urgent, so he didn't get angry and quickly answered. What? Flemington was so startled that he tumbled out of bed. That what was so loud that it even sounded like a dialect. On the other end, Song Ping hurriedly said, Feng Zhao said that he heard some sounds, but I asked the relevant professionals about it. They said that they weren't sure what it was and that it might have nothing to do with our base. The equipment also didn't manage to capture it. That's right. What else was there to hope for if the equipment could capture it? Flemington couldn't contain his excitement. Back then, The equipment on planet Baiji had been limited and hadn't been able to detect the ore, but Fang Zhao had heard it. Flemington's breathing became ragged when he thought about the rise of planet Baiji. Ha 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 ha, I never thought that I would have such a day. Wait till the clouds disperse to see the moon. Flemington couldn't be bothered with anything else. He dressed himself as quickly as he could and dashed out of his bedroom. Song Ping led Fang Zhao to Flemington's office. Not long after, Planet Bu's top commander came over with large strides. Ha ha ha, Fang Zhao, I have long heard of your great name. I finally get to meet you today. Flemington was brimming with enthusiasm as he shook Fang Zhao's outstretched hand. The glow in his eyes was as though he had seen his biological father. Song Ping, who was standing at the side, thought to himself, Commander, restrain yourself. Don't scare him away. Flemington didn't care about what others thought and asked Fang Zhao anxiously, You said that you heard a sound that our base's equipment couldn't capture? Was it or? No, Fang Zhao replied. Flemington's mood plummeted like a cliff. Song Ping coughed lightly. Fang Zhao said that it sounded like a sound emitted by some kind of electronic equipment. Electronic equipment? Flemington calmed down. It wasn't emitted by our outpost or any of the surveillance equipment in other locations. It shouldn't be. Song Ping explained, We don't have many outposts here, and the equipment used in the nearby outposts is limited. The base has everything. I let Fang Zhao listen to it, but he said it wasn't. Song Ping wasn't an impulsive person. He wouldn't report it to Flemington before confirming it. If it wasn't the equipment used by our base and outpost, Flemington suppressed the disappointment in his heart and put on a solemn expression. The first thing he thought of was, spy. As though he had guessed what Song Ping and Flemington were thinking, Fang Zhao said, It shouldn't be a spy. It wasn't invasive. Reason? Flemington frowned as he looked at Fang Zhao. Intuition, Fang Zhao replied. Flemington didn't say anything. Curly hair was lying at Fang Zhao's feet. He raised his head and looked at Flemington before looking at Fang Zhao. His pure little eyes seemed as though he didn't understand what they were talking about. Flemington pondered for a bit. Regardless of whether that sound was invasive or not, this matter has to be clarified. Flemington brought up the weather information and asked Fang Zhao, Can you tell which direction the sound is coming from? Yes. Fang Zhao pointed in a direction. How far? Flemington asked again. I'm not sure, but it isn't within the range of the base. That sound is still ringing now? Did you hear it last night? Flemington asked again. I didn't hear it last night. It's still ringing now, Fang Zhao replied truthfully. Fang Zhao really hadn't heard it last night. Curly hair hadn't shown any abnormalities either. That sound really hadn't been ringing last night. Of course, it was also possible that the sound was further away and they hadn't heard it. Fang Zhao, help me out tonight. I'll send someone to follow you out of the base to find the source of the sound. The storm outside is starting to weaken. In the direction you pointed out, there shouldn't be any storms that can't be resisted in the next 12 hours. All right. However, the program team will start filming tomorrow, Fang Zhao said. Don't worry. I'll settle it. Flemington made the arrangements. After some thought, he decided to personally follow Fang Zhao out. He couldn't sit still at the base. Regardless of whether it was good or bad, he had to get to the bottom of it. The efficiency of the base was very high. Flemington quickly mobilized manpower, vehicles, and flying transports to bring Fang Zhao out of the base. A group of people headed in the direction Fang Zhao had pointed out. At the base, Barbara was currently painting her nails. She had messed up the pattern on her nails from today's trip out. Due to Barbara's high standards of perfection, she had spent 2 to 3 hours to get her nails cleaned and manicured. Only a little bit was left. Barbara still had some artistic cells and had personally designed the pattern for her maid to draw. She had originally wanted to embed a diamond, but when she thought about the diamond ring she had lost today, she changed her plans. At the same time, she was thinking about how she would take revenge on Zero tomorrow. For example, scamming him of 100 million first? As she was thinking, a bodyguard who had followed her to Planet Boo rushed over and whispered a few words to Barbara. Barbara's fingers trembled, and the almost completed pattern on her nails was instantly ruined. The maid trembled at the side and hung her head, not daring to make a sound. However, this time, Barbara didn't pay attention to her nails. She only asked that bodyguard in a deep voice, "Is the news true?" "It's true. Flemington has already brought Feng Zhao out of the base." "Follow them." "Yes. I'll send someone to secretly follow them." Barbara raised her chin. "No need. Go directly. I'll personally bring someone to follow them. It's too dangerous. Won't Flemington make a move on us outside?" A bodyguard asked worriedly. "They wouldn't dare." Barbara didn't have any intention of continuing to explain. She arranged for someone to rent a car from the base and called over another bodyguard. "Send a message to Zero's side and let him know what Feng Zhao heard. Flemington is currently bringing him out to search for it." "What about the others? Do we also need to divulge it?" that bodyguard asked. "No need. If Zero knows, the other two will know too," Barbara said with certainty. On Zero's side, Zero's mind was filled with thoughts on how to complain to his grandfather. After he finished his draft, he wrote an email and set it to be sent automatically after internet access. Zero's agent was so worried that he couldn't sleep. He was thinking about how to face Barbara's wrath tomorrow. An accompanying bodyguard rushed in and informed Zero of the news he had just received. Really? Zero was pleasantly surprised. He had been engrossed in writing the letter just now and hadn't had the time to change his tone from acting like a spoiled child to the Lijo governor. "The news is true." "Good." Zero tossed aside the matter of how to more effectively swindle his father and immediately called Wu Tianhao over to conspire. It wasn't some brotherly loyalty, and Zero wasn't as thorough in his analysis as Barbara, but he knew that roping in one more person meant an extra layer of protection. It was just like finding someone to share the burden when you got into trouble. Even if you got beaten up in the end, you definitely wouldn't be the only one suffering. Could it be that he discovered another or? This was Zero's first thought. Shouldn't be. This planet doesn't seem to have any energy ores. Even if there were, there wouldn't be a lot, and the grade wouldn't be too high. "There's no value in mining it," Wu Tianhao said. "Could it be aliens?" Zero guessed. "To be precise, to the natives, we are the aliens," Wu Tianhao retorted. "Then it must be something else important. I know that fellow Feng Zhao. Even though he isn't as handsome as me, his ears are simply sharper than a dog's. What he heard might be some earth-shattering thing. We can't miss it." Zero was afraid that Wu Tianhao would cower. Wu Tianhao didn't cower. He was analyzing the pros and cons, and his train of thought overlapped with Zero's. After the conspiracy, he realized that the pressure on the two of them was too great. Thus, he called over Midasi, who was about to head to the sports room to play basketball. When Midasi heard what the two of them were talking about, he was stunned for a moment. He passed the racket in his hands to a bodyguard and quietly made a hand signal. The bodyguard took the racket and left for a while. When he returned, he whispered something to Midasi. Following that, Midasi joined Zero and Wu Tianhao's conspiracy. "Why don't we first sneak?" Just as they started talking, the three of them found out that Barbara had just brought people out of the base with great fanfare. The three of them. Sneak what? Hurry up and bring people out. The three of them didn't delay. Like Barbara, they rented cars and flying transports from the base and brought people out. In the rest area of the program team, the director was engrossed in the script. He had just discussed it with the scriptwriter and added a few highlights that he felt would be very topical to make the program script even more perfect. Full marks. A stroke of genius. The plot was breathtaking, full of ups and downs, gripping the heart. With such a script and 5 high-level special guests, there was no need to worry that the program wouldn't be able to make a comeback. Calling over a few other program team members who were also so excited that they couldn't sleep, the director had victory in his hands. "This time, we will surely soar to the skies." The other program team members also had dreamy looks on their faces. Promotions and raises were right before their eyes. "Let's wait until tomorrow. We will first," the director, who had a confident smile on his face, hadn't even finished speaking when he received a notification from Bubase's military. The program's recording would be delayed, and they would be borrowing a special guest. Director, angry. The director didn't know the reason why Feng Zhao had been borrowed by the military. However, he felt that he should first appease the other special guests. Perhaps they had some grievances? The director gave Zero's agent a call. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, he heard the whistling of the wind and the sound of a fleet of vehicles driving over the desert. He also heard Zero's and Wu Tianhao's excited cries. Director. Chapter 393. On the sand, a convoy was moving. There were also several flying transports in the air. The storm in the desert had not stopped, but it was clearly weakening. Flemington looked at the weather information sent over and saw Feng Zhao staring out the window. He thought that Feng Zhao was worried about the storm outside and said, "This wave has already passed. It will rapidly weaken in the future. This level isn't enough to threaten us. We can still go out on missions in such weather." Feng Zhao, who was carrying curly hair in the back seat, smiled when he heard Flemington's words and didn't bother to explain. He was not worried about the storm, which was not enough to threaten the convoy. He was trying to figure out what the voice was. Now that he was getting closer to the voice, he could hear it more clearly. Feng Zhao had no way of explaining to the others that he could hear the call and cry for help in the voice. Even he himself did not understand why he could hear these things. Is it really in this direction? Flemington stared at the map and the route of the convoy with a doubtful expression. Yes, Feng Zhao affirmed. Flemington's frown deepened, but he didn't order the convoy to slow down. How much farther? Asked Flemington. Given our current speed, we can reach in half an hour, Feng Zhao replied. If the direction is correct, we'll arrive at the outer region in half an hour. The so-called outer region was just a relative term. The area where the base was located, as well as the areas with frequent patrols and surveillance equipment, all belonged to the inner region. The area outside the inner region was the outer region. In layman's terms, it was a place that the base's military didn't understand and wouldn't normally go to. The sand dunes in that area change quickly, and there's also quicksand. We have to be careful. Flemington picked up the communication device and got everyone to follow the first car. The lead car was very big, but there were not many people in it. There were all kinds of equipment on it that allowed the car to avoid dangerous areas. Commander, someone is following us. An officer briefed Flemington on the matters at the base and the people following them. Flemington let out a long sigh. He knew that he couldn't hide it from those people. They were the descendants of the great general, after all. Did they really think that those super clans nurtured fools? Furthermore, even if they managed to hide it from Zero and the others, there would still be people from the base who would send them the news. Bu Base wasn't Flemington's base alone. Feng Zhao was too strange. With the incident on Planet Baiji as a precedent, everyone else was very sharp this time around. After pondering for a short while, Flemington said, "Contact the vehicles behind and let them return to the base. If you can't persuade him, then forget it." At the very least, they had to show their attitude. If something really happened, he did try to persuade them, but the people behind him insisted on following. After the call ended, Flemington smiled and patted Feng Zhao's shoulder. "If we can discover anything important this time, I will definitely help you apply for military merits. Maybe your reserve duty rank can be raised again." Although that was the case, it was impossible to be promoted to the rank of reserve duty if one didn't have a particularly significant contribution and influence. Many people in the military had earned merits through hard work before they could be promoted. Feng Zhao had already retired from active duty. In the past, there had been no such thing as a promotion for reserve duty soldiers. A few years ago, new regulations had been introduced to stimulate the enthusiasm of reserve duty soldiers. If someone like Feng Zhao, who hadn't retired from reserve duty and was able to earn great merits, he might really be able to get promoted. The premise was that they had to make great contributions and influence. Following closely behind the convoy. Is it really all right to follow them like this? After all, this is the base military and we aren't familiar with them. Will they forcefully stop us? Midasi asked worriedly. Definitely not. Even if they object, we can donate a few more things. I will add another truck of garlic. Right now, Zero didn't want to consider how the base military would stop them. He just wanted to know what Feng Zhao had discovered and what he would do next. He was about to be bored to death. Hearing that Zero was donating garlic, Midasi scratched his head. This isn't too good, right? Why isn't it good? What's wrong with garlic? Are you looking down on garlic? Do you know how valuable agricultural products are now? Furthermore, garlic is even rarer in this poor and broken-down place. Midas thought about it and agreed. Ordinarily, the soldiers stationed at the base couldn't afford garlic. There was a limit to the variety of seasonings in the canteen's dishes. The more extravagant seasonings were locally produced. The taste wasn't that great, but it was fine as long as it was edible. This place wasn't picky. If you couldn't eat it, you would go hungry. With Zero's garlic donation, the soldiers' livelihoods would improve. Then I will donate a gymnasium. The base's gymnasium isn't built properly, Midas said. Wu Tianhao wasn't willing to fall behind. I wonder if they want a martial arts center. 15 minutes later, in the convoy at the front, Flemington received an excited report from his subordinate. We received a signal. Flemington nearly shot up from his seat. The hand holding the communications device was trembling. Fang Zhao's ears hadn't heard wrongly. Have you confirmed the source of the signal? An unfamiliar signal. Although it is very weak and we aren't sure what it is, the signal gets stronger the further we go. It should be the place Fang Zhao mentioned. We haven't set up any monitoring devices in the vicinity. It can't be a signal from our equipment. Very good. Continue analyzing the source of the signal and find out what it is. The troops increase their speed. No, maintain their original speed. We must be cautious. All of you, stay alert. Flemington roared. Flemington couldn't be bothered with Fang Zhao now. After the call ended, he immediately contacted the base and made arrangements. Although Fang Zhao had said that the signal wasn't threatening, Flemington didn't dare take the risk. The base had arranged for people to be on standby at all times. They didn't need Fang Zhao's directions anymore. The troops' signal receivers had already captured the signal. When the signal became clear, the troops had arrived at their destination. Flemington looked at the map, then at the sand not far away. He pointed ahead. It's here. Redo the scan. Deep scan. Flemington wished he could immediately dig out whatever was beneath the sand, but the signal source was buried too deep. They didn't understand this region, so they wanted to see if the foundation was stable and if there was any quicksand. While the surveying personnel were busy, Fang Zhao was also looking in that direction. The map that Flemington had given him indicated that the large area in front was like a huge pit. The pit was filled with sand. If the sand was replaced with water, it would be a huge lake with a depth of over 100 meters. The signal source was at the bottom of the pit. Back then, when Bu Base had been established, preliminary global surveys had been conducted. This region was only 100 meters deep, and it wasn't given any more attention after being classified as the outer region. Detectors couldn't be installed, and even if they were installed, they would be buried by the sand after a few days. Bu Base was poor and couldn't afford such losses. Thus, there wasn't a single monitoring station or outpost in this region. Seeing Fang Zhao bring the dog out of the car, Flemington reminded him, "Keep the leash on. Don't lose the dog. It's still fine at night, but don't let it out after daybreak. This dog has thick fur and is afraid of the heat. Let it stay in the car." 200 million. Fang Zhao still wanted to borrow the dog to catch pests. Don't let the dog get sick. Fang Zhao acknowledged and led Curly Hair around the newly marked safe zone. Curly Hair was very excited. He sniffed around the sand and then dug frantically. Flemington chuckled when he saw this. This little stubby leg is rather strong. Before he could finish speaking, Flemington's smile vanished, and he stared fixedly at the pit Curly Hair was digging. A dog's sense of smell was more sensitive than a human's. It was said that this dog worth 200 million had an extraordinary sense of smell. Could it have discovered something? Half a minute later, an animal that looked like a sand lizard was picked up and tossed around by Curly Hair. Flemington. Disappointment. After a while, Flemington sensed some activity from that side and looked over unwillingly. Curly Hair had dragged out another animal. Flemington. He silently retracted his gaze. This was the third time. Flemington no longer harbored any hope. When he looked over, he saw Fang Zhao squatting down and picking up something from the pit Curly Hair had dug. The reflected light made Flemington squint his eyes. but they immediately widened and he quickly walked over. What did you discover? A piece of metal. Fang Zhao handed over the piece of metal that he had dug out. The piece of metal wasn't even half the size of a palm and seemed to be the wreckage of a flying transport or something else. After it was sent for analysis, the conclusion was that these wreckage had existed even longer than Bu Base. This also meant that these wreckage had been buried here long before Bu Base had even been established. Commander, the results of this region survey are out. A technician transmitted the results of this region survey over. Flemington quickly read through the survey results. Every muscle on his face was filled with excitement as he pointed at the huge sand pit in front. Dig. In the past, he had been so poor that he hated that he couldn't split a single cent to spend. Now, Flemington, who had originally intended to take the conservative route, decided to be bold and give it a try. He thought about Planet Baiji and Planet Y. All the bases that were originally at the back of the development sequence had developed. If there was a chance to change Planet Boo, who wouldn't be willing? Even if the changes weren't huge, it would be good to create some news and attract some attention. Of course, if there were others who were willing to help share the burden, Flemington was also willing. For example, those special guests at the back. Just as he mentioned those special guests, Zero and his party also arrived. After finding out that there was something beneath this huge sand pit, Zero's imagination ran wild. Another batch of equipment was delivered by flying transport from the base. Flemington got people to distribute those handheld metal detectors. Those who weren't participating in the excavation mission at the huge pit were to look around for any wreckage that was buried too shallow. The more they dug, the more information they would obtain. Their base was poor and their equipment was outdated. Some things still had to rely on manpower, so Flemington transferred over another team from the base. The sky gradually brightened, and the temperature clearly rose. Zero and the others also came over to ask for a few detectors to play with. Give me one. I will do it myself. Me too. Me too. Zero couldn't take it anymore after searching for quite a while and didn't find anything. He glanced around. What is that? Zero saw some white granules. Barbara, Wu Tianhao, and Midasi heard the commotion and came over. He carefully pinched a granule with his fingers and twisted it forcefully, turning it into powder. Zero had a look of astonishment on his face. Is this some kind of desert specialty salt? A base soldier at the side had an embarrassed look on his face. This is some kind of desert specialty shit. Not far away, a few peculiar-looking creatures poked their heads out from the sand. Seeing that people were paying attention to them, they quickly burrowed back into the sand. Curly Hair, who was being led by Fang Zhao, twitched his nose and took 2 steps towards Zero and the others before being pushed back by Fang Zhao. Let them dig the rest themselves. Chapter 394. Wu Tianhao laughed heartily at Zero. Zero's face stiffened as he dusted off the white powder on his hands. Barbara, who was beside him, had already avoided him like the plague. Midasi held back his laughter. When he saw Colonel Song Ping, he ran over to borrow some digging equipment and mentioned the matter of donations they had discussed on the way here. Song Ping was delighted. Whether it was garlic, a dojo, or a gymnasium, they all wanted it. When Fang Zhao heard this, he also said, I will also join in. What else does the base lack? Song Ping thought for a bit, coughed lightly, and said somewhat embarrassedly, why don't you donate to a KTV? He wasn't bragging, but when it came to singing military songs, no one on Bu base would dare claim to be first if he claimed to be second. It was a pity there wasn't a place to showcase it. Fang Zhao, it's fine if it gets approved. As they were speaking, Curly Hair, who had been shoved into the tent by Fang Zhao, stuck his head out and stared at Zero. Zero, who had just been mocked by Wu Tianhao, twitched his mouth and stood up. He switched on his detector and was about to change locations when he heard a sharp beeping sound. The few people who had been avoiding all turned to look in Zero's direction. Zero moved his detector. There's something under the sand. Hey, what are you doing? Shoving aside Wu Tianhao, who had run over to dig, Zero pointed at 2 bodyguards. Right here. Dig. After daybreak, the temperature rose rapidly. Everyone's faces were covered in sweat, but they were still in good spirits and didn't hide in their tents. The bodyguards propped up their umbrellas. Zero stood under the umbrellas, drank a cup of water, wiped his face, and stared at the two bodyguards digging. This was the metal piece he had detected. When the time came, he would bring it back as a souvenir to show off. The excavation work on Flemington's side had already started for some time, and they had discovered some metal pieces. Although they had been there for a long time, they didn't show any signs of corrosion. Based on the analysis of these metal pieces, the technicians deduced that they were probably from a spaceship or exploration ship. The material was similar to that of the Arcturus and other exploration ships. When Zero discovered the metal piece, it didn't attract Flemington's attention. Now, Flemington's main focus was on the sandpit. The two bodyguards dug away the top layer of sand and revealed some curled metal pieces. One of the bodyguards had intended to use his strength to pull out the remaining parts buried in the sand, but he was interrupted by Zero. "Be careful, be careful." Zero blocked the bodyguard who was excavating the metal pieces. "I've seen archaeological films. You have to use a brush to brush away the sand bit by bit, then blow gently." As he spoke, Zero pouted as he lay there. Before he could finish exhaling, a gust of wind slapped his face with sand. He awkwardly wiped his face. The sand and sweat had turned into muddy water, and his face was all messed up. Zero immediately lost his patience and directly pulled out the metal piece from the sand. "There seems to be words." Zero brushed off the sand on the metal sheet and carefully blew on it. This time, he paid attention to the direction of the wind so that it didn't get stuck on his face. The rest of the words on the metal plate had been damaged and blurred, and it was impossible to see what it was. Fortunately, the small piece in the middle was slightly clearer. Zero flipped the metal piece up and down. "This should be straight. This letter is N?" Midas came over to take a look. "It looks like Ada. The right part is obviously longer." "Zero? Oh, really? No wonder I felt something was wrong." Before he could finish speaking, Barbara rushed over to snatch the metal piece and kicked Zero to the side. Zero was furious after being kicked. He rolled up his sleeves and was about to retaliate when he was stopped by Midas. "Babla, did you recognize him?" Midas stopped Zero and asked. Barbara's reaction was too big. It was completely different from her usual aristocratic and virtuous demeanor. She even flung her fan to the side. There weren't many situations that could cause Barbara to lose her persona. Midas, who simply hadn't seen any useful information, waited for her to give an answer. Hearing Midas's words, Zero stared blankly and also looked over. Seeing Barbara's sparkling eyes, Zero shivered. Had this unreasonable spirit gone crazy? There was still a lot of sand on the metal piece. Touching it would result in a layer of dust. At this moment, Barbara couldn't care less about her mysophobia. She gripped it tightly with both hands and stared at the metal piece with an expression of shock, passion, infatuation, and madness. It was as though she had seen a 200-kilogram diamond. Alcade. Ada, character imprint. It's definitely the Alcade. What? At some point, Flemington, who had walked over, spoke in a different tone. He didn't dare believe his ears. His heart had trembled the moment he heard the words Alcade. Midas, who had his ears perked up, also heard it. He was equally shocked. "Don't tell me what's buried in this sandpit is one of the 7 spaceships of the legendary Dream Team, the Alcade? Didn't they say that the Alcade had been destroyed during the initial exploration?" Flemington took a deep breath. "We lost contact with the Alcade. It's just that we haven't found any traces of it in all these years. Therefore, some people guess that it encountered a cosmic storm and was destroyed, vanishing from the universe." Zero Slacker Luo was at a loss. "What's the Alcade? There's such a spaceship?" His agent explained to him from the side. Many people knew about the Sirius. It was one of the pioneers of human space exploration in the new era. It represented an era, and before the Sirius, there was a group of exploration teams at the Elder level. They were formed of 7 unmanned spaceships, named after the Big Dipper. The dream team of exploration teams at the elder level. They carried the peak intelligence of that era. Barbara's scorching gaze shifted from the metal plate in her hand to the sandpit that was currently being excavated. The Alcade, serial number Ada, lost contact during an exploration mission. For the sake of finding the Alcade, the Interplanetary Fund has offered a bounty of 100 billion. 100 billion. To the vast majority of people, this was an astronomical figure. Everyone's eyes lit up with a blaze. The founder of the Dream Team was the founder of the Interplanetary Fund. The initial bounty was 10 billion. As the years passed, the Interplanetary Fund's managers changed generation after generation, but they never withdrew the bounty on the Alcade. In fact, the bounty was constantly increasing. After 400 years, the bounty had reached a level that even someone like Barbara, who was born into a super-rich family, would go crazy. Over the past 400 years, as humanity ventured into outer space, many adventurers had attempted to find the Alcade, only to return in disappointment. Regardless of whether it was Flemington or Song Ping, they were the same as many people who had served on other planets. They had all dreamed of finding the Alcade, but they had all been jolted awake by reality. After 400 years, many people only treated the Alcade mission, which had occupied the top spot on the bounty list for 400 years, as a topic of idle conversation. If the Interplanetary Fund didn't really expect to find the Alcade, that's why they increased the bounty so much. Who could have expected that after 400 years, traces of the Alcade would really be found? If we really dig up the Alcade, will the Interplanetary Fund go back on their word? Wu Tianhao asked. Definitely not. That's the Interplanetary Fund we're talking about. Barbara retorted. It didn't matter if the Interplanetary Fund went back on their word. If they really dug up the Alcade, the Interplanetary Fund definitely wouldn't go back on their word. She wanted a share of the profits from this Alcade mission. No matter what, the Interplanetary Fund's bounty had never been faked. Whatever they said, it was whatever it was. There wouldn't be a single cent missing. There wouldn't be payment in installments either. If they said 100 billion, then 100 billion would be 100 billion. So what if they regretted it? Not allowed. Definitely not allowed. Not a single cent missing. Flemington was grinning so widely that his mouth was about to split open. He wished he could float into space. 100 billion. Even if they couldn't claim all of it, their boo base would definitely claim the majority. Even if they couldn't apply for next year's military budget, the Interplanetary Fund's bounty would be enough for them to use. The spaceport had to be upgraded. The base could be expanded. Yes, they still had to hire some agronomists with high salaries. The equipment of the soldiers had to be changed from inside to out, and they had to buy 10 more fleets. Flemington had already started to consider how to spend the bounty. The news of the Alcade also made the base team that was carrying out the excavation mission extremely excited. Fang Zhao was much calmer compared to the craziness of the others. He recalled the information he had previously obtained. There was very little information on the internet regarding the 7 first-generation interstellar exploration spaceships. All he knew was that the 7 spaceships of the Dream Team were the most technologically advanced batch. The Sirius at the back belonged to the younger generation. The other exploratory spaceships and spaceships at the back belonged to the younger generation. Most technological products would probably only have some value as a collector's item and would be displayed in a museum or on display. It was reasonable to say that after so many years had passed, science and technology were constantly advancing. Spaceships and warships had already been upgraded several times. Even if a spaceship from that era was discovered, it wouldn't make people go crazy over it. However, everyone's reaction was like an archaeological team from the old era discovering a majestic imperial tomb. The 7 spaceships of the Dream Team that could make the Interplanetary Fund offer a bounty of 100 billion probably weren't simple. Furthermore, Fang Zhao was more concerned about the top-notch intelligence of that era that they had mentioned. Flemington also didn't care about what Fang Zhao thought. He prepared to report the situation to his superiors while instructing people to continue excavating. As for Zero and the others, Flemington demarcated a few areas for them to play at the side. Zero and the others weren't willing to stay idle at the side and asked Flemington for some excavating machinery. Midas's agent, LVXIN, was currently taking photos of the busy Midas. Zero glanced over and said to his own agent, who was drinking water, "Look at other people's agents. Be more self-aware." Zero's agent, who had been filming for over 3 hours and had just taken a break. "Did I fucking film a dog just now?" After taking a few photos, Zero started excavating with the machine. He felt that he was doing an arduous mission with historical significance. He felt a special sense of mission. Zero decided that he would write a travel book when he returned. Those days I operated an excavator on Planet Boo. Chapter 395. Huangzhou, Interplanetary Fund Headquarters. After Flemington reported the matter of the Alcade, he also contacted them. The council held an emergency meeting. Looking at the wreckage, it does look like the missing Alcade. The 8 at mark is the same as what was recorded in the files. It's just a suspicion now. I'm not sure. Should we send someone over? Flemington's intention is to see if our bounty is still valid. They are eyeing the 100 billion bounty. With such a huge sum of money, unless the board of directors made a decision, other junior leaders would not be able to touch it. The bounty is not a small amount. Sigh. I didn't expect to find the Alcade. Who discovered it? People from Boo Base? According to Flemington, it was Fang Zhao who heard the commotion. Then, he mobilized a team of people to follow the sound and find some clues. Tisk, look at the markings on the map. The distance isn't close. How do Fang Zhao's ears grow? As expected of the ears that even the Academy of Sciences is concerned about. Let's put Fang Zhao's matter aside for now. Let's discuss what we should do. In the conference room, all the directors spoke one after another. It was not that they were being perfunctory, but that each of them had their own insistent opinions. The debate was rather intense. The chairman, who was sitting at the head of the table, frowned more and more. He raised his hand and was about to slam the table when his communicator rang. Then, the directors in the meeting room realized that the chairman, who had been acting like a big boss just a moment ago, immediately acted like a grandson when he answered the phone. He even had a respectful smile on his face. The people who were arguing also shut up. Since the chairman had such a reaction, they didn't dare to make any noise. They all sat up straight like primary school students in class. She suddenly became obedient. The chairman bowed slightly. Yes, yes, yes. I'll arrange it right away. Yes. Don't worry. I will personally keep an eye on it. After the call ended, the chairman's face instantly reverted to its previous dignified look. He said in a deep voice, "Make the excavation of the Alcade our #1 mission. Immediately arrange for someone to head to Planet Boo to take over the excavation work." The others didn't ask for the reason and responded in unison. Since there was a notice from above, it was basically confirmed that the Alcade was buried there. Then what about the bounty? Someone asked. The chairman gritted his teeth. Here, once I dig out the Alcade, I'll transfer the money immediately. Full payment. While the Interplanetary Fund was making its move, the General Administration of Aeronautics and Astronautics didn't lag behind and also dispatched people to Planet Boo. Because the Alcade had not been excavated, the news was kept secret and not made public. The public did not know about it either. The netizens were all discussing how the variety show Up Close Contact would make a comeback. Previously, during the high-profile publicity, everyone in the production team was full of confidence, and this time, the invited guests all brought their own topics and traffic. The production team should have started filming by now, right? The officials didn't release any news. In the past, they would release a few photos. Why is there nothing this time? It's all a ploy. They're purposely trying to cover it up and keep it mysterious. Maybe he's still holding back some big move. Director, come out and say something. At Boo Base, the program team's director, who was completely unaware of the netizen summons, had a faint smile on his face as he read through the script. Then, he held a pep rally for the staff to rouse their spirits and get ready to go all out. Then, he received a notification from the base. Due to a temporary mission, the collaboration would be postponed. Director. He started to panic. The director immediately contacted a few guests to discuss the filming of the show. Fang Zhao did not object, but the other 4 special guests applied for leave at the last minute. When the director received the reply, he was speechless, heartbroken, irritable. He wanted to curse. The base changed its mind and refused to cooperate. The special guests found excuses to go on strike. What about the godly script that I spent the entire night sorting out? Compensation? No amount of compensation can make up for the damage done to me. The director fumed as he flipped through the contract and was about to find someone to tear it up when he was stunned by the news about the Alcade. Alcade? One of the spaceships known as the Dream Team from 400 years ago? An indescribable glint flickered in the director's eyes. Only 2 of the 7 senior spaceships from back then were left. One was in the Space Museum, and the other was in a top-secret research institute. The rest had been destroyed during their missions due to various accidents. The Alcade was a special technological relic from that era. If it was really discovered, it would surely have extraordinary significance. No wonder Bubase changed its mind at the last minute. No wonder the special guests weren't in the mood to film the show. This was also an opportunity. After looking at the meticulously prepared script and pondering for 5 minutes, the director's wavering heart finally settled down. Let's go to change the script. This episode will revolve around the Alcade. The scriptwriter didn't understand. Director, we are doing a poverty alleviation reality variety show. Speaking of which, the majority of the show is still entertainment and not archaeology. This doesn't match our temperament. However, the director had already made his choice and didn't intend to change it. In our position, we must know how to innovate when making a show. We must keep up with current events and grasp the main points. Furthermore, if we don't change it and still follow the previous plan, who knows when we will be able to film? Everyone in the program team nodded in unison. Makes sense. In the end, they were still forced to do this. The director didn't want to study the thoughts of others and called for the staff to follow. Indeed, after the director changed the plan, Zero and the others also agreed to cooperate. In any case, they had to guard the sandpit. It wasn't a bad idea to record the show here. Zero hugged the piece of metal with the Ada imprint that he had personally dug out and carefully rubbed it. He was about to kiss it in his delight, but he gave up when he thought that it had been buried in the sand and rubbed by feces. Zero got his assistant to prepare an exquisite box, and Zero placed the metal piece inside. He even printed out a few photos and placed them in the box. He got people from the base to help bring them back to Earth. Today, Flemington had already arranged for people to bring the excavated metal piece back to Earth and hand it over to the Aerospace General Headquarters and the Interplanetary Fund for Research. Zero asked them to help send a delivery. Inside the box was a handwritten letter. Besides sharing the Alcade's excavation information with the Lijo governor, Zero had also lodged a complaint against his father. Not long after, the Lijo governor was very happy to receive this souvenir with a special meaning. On the back of the first photo was a few crooked words written by Zero. I dug it out. Looking at the other photos of Zero driving the excavator with a face full of sand and dust, the Lijo governor's grandfatherly love for his grandson rapidly swelled. He turned around and helped his grandson beat his son. He didn't feel any psychological burden when doing such things. Elsewhere, personnel from the Interplanetary Fund and Aerospace General Headquarters had already arrived on Planet Boo and completed the handover of the mission to the base army. This time, the equipment brought over by the Interplanetary Fund and Aerospace General Headquarters was much more advanced. The excavation speed wasn't something the old and worn-out machinery on Boo Base could compare to. The signal emitted from the sandpit lasted for 12 hours before stopping. According to Fang Zhao's conjecture, the signal was emitted every once in a while and would last for 12 hours each time. Although the signal couldn't be received, the location had already been determined, and it wouldn't affect the excavation work. Following the arrival of personnel from the Interplanetary Fund and Aerospace General Headquarters, a sturdy fort and many resting quarters had already been built near the sandpit. The program team had also moved here to make it more convenient for the program recording. Flemington looked at the situation and decided to convert this place into a second base after this group of people left. Such good construction resources had to be fully utilized and couldn't be wasted. As the commanding officer of the base, Flemington was in a rather good mood as he thought about the bounty he was about to receive and the plans for a second base. After the handover, the base army would be excluded from the excavation mission. However, Flemington wasn't worried at all. Their base was only waiting to receive the money. The Interplanetary Fund's chairman had already replied and agreed to transfer the funds once the Alcade was excavated. As for how the bounty would be distributed, it would be up to them to discuss. Where's Feng Zhao? Flemington searched the vicinity of the sandpit, but didn't see any trace of Feng Zhao. He just finished recording the program. I think he ran over there. Song Ping pointed in a direction. He has bodyguards following him and has the map we gave him. There aren't any storms in this area recently. As long as he doesn't run out of the safe zone, he should be fine. All right, I got it. By the time Flemington finished handling his matters, it was already very late. Feng Zhao was searching for inspiration a kilometer away from the sandpit. Above him was the mysterious and enchanting sea of stars. Beneath his feet was the dried-up sand that nurtured life. The starry sky and the boundless desert formed a dreamy note. A long, long time ago, he had also sat on the sand in a certain region. It was just that at that time, he hadn't been able to see the resplendent starry sky, and it hadn't been this peaceful. This was a familiar yet novel feeling. The surroundings were very dark. There were no lights. Looking into the distance, he opened up his notebook and wrote symbols one by one. Feng Zhao wrote very smoothly. By the time Flemington came looking for him, he had already finished the first draft. Flemington had looked for Feng Zhao to discuss the distribution of the bounty. You were the first to hear the signal this time, but without our base troops, you wouldn't have found this place. Zero is also clamoring for a share. Let's find a time to sit down and have a chat. No matter what, you will surely receive quite a bit this time. If you don't know how to use so much money, why not use it to support Planet Boo's development? Flemington said casually, All right. I was just joking. Flemington suddenly stuttered. I wasn't joking. Feng Zhao's tone was calm but serious. Cough. I'm sorry about that. Ha ha ha. It's settled then. Thank you in advance. Flemington sighed in his heart. Feng Zhao was really a good kid. However, even though Feng Zhao had said this, Flemington also felt bad about taking advantage of him. Thus, he became a little more sincere. Planet Boo doesn't have resources like Planet Baiji and Planet Y. This place is barren, very poor, and very tough. The restrictions on the conditions make the base's personnel highly mobile. I will also be transferred in 2 years. Before I leave, I hope that I can build up the base a little better and let the soldiers stationed here have a better life. I feel heartache for my own soldiers. I have to fight for more resources for them before I leave. Not necessarily. What? Planet Boo also has its own advantages. Feng Zhao chuckled. Flemington thought that Feng Zhao was consoling him and also chuckled. What advantages does Planet Boo have? After Flemington left, Feng Zhao gazed at the desert under the night sky. He hadn't lied to Flemington just now. Planet Boo really had its own opportunities. Yesterday, he had unintentionally overheard people from the Spaceflight General Headquarters talking in low voices. In the future, Planet Boo might very well become another strategic military location. Perhaps it might even become a new base for technological tourism. What a cliché. Apologies for being late. See you tomorrow. Tweet a new article, History's Divine Manners, Dragon Riding Son-in-Law. Zhang Shou had transmigrated for 3 years and grown up in the countryside with a mother but no father. Just as Zhang Shou was peacefully farming and teaching, a group of carriages paid a visit one day and brought him a fiancée. Chapter 396. Planet Boo was vast and sparsely populated. Many places were dry with little rain. Although there were places with frequent storms, there were also places with few storms. It was also very convenient to conduct flight experiments here. However, Planet Boo didn't have any energy or deposits. This was also the reason why Spaceflight General Headquarters had always considered Planet Boo as a candidate but hadn't made a decision. Now that there was a preference for a location, it was probably because of the Alcade. However, Spaceflight General Headquarters had yet to make a formal decision. Every day, there would be people inspecting various locations. Flemington hadn't sensed it because they were secretive and didn't make it clear. Although Feng Zhao had heard Spaceflight General Headquarters' private conversations, he wouldn't say it out loud. In the next few days, Feng Zhao, Zero, and the others followed the director's arrangements to film the program. Filming was rather easy. Zero felt that Feng Zhao was really an anomaly. He didn't even know how to rest. While they were sleeping, Feng Zhao was writing his thesis. While they were playing and digging, Feng Zhao was composing. While they were racing outside, Feng Zhao was reading. While they were playing cards, Feng Zhao was doing homework. To prevent Feng Zhao from relaxing, Moleng assigned a lot of homework and recommended over 10 books for Feng Zhao to read. Therefore, apart from filming, Feng Zhao still had a lot of work to do. Zero sympathized with Feng Zhao. How pitiful. Even on a foreign planet, he can't avoid homework. Midas empathized. After all, he is still in advanced studies. The tests for advanced studies are homework, works, and theses. If he can't produce anything, he won't be able to get his graduation certificate. He might even be kicked out of the advanced studies. Back when he had been a professional tennis player, he would receive calls from his coach when he was on vacation, urging him to practice every day. Flemington had gathered a few people to discuss the issue of the bounty. Zero had been fighting for his share of the bounty, and the reason he had given was very sufficient. If I hadn't entered the cast, there wouldn't have been Barbara and Wu Tianhao, and Midasy wouldn't have been tricked. The program team wouldn't have wanted to do something big, and wouldn't have sought out a poor base like Planet Boo for cooperation. Boo Base wouldn't have willfully contacted Feng Zhao. This way, Feng Zhao wouldn't have entered the cast, and wouldn't have heard the Alcade's stuttering signal. Also, I was the one who dug out that metal fragment with Ada. Barbara and Wu Tianhao were on Zero's side this time. They clearly knew that they wouldn't get much money even if they succeeded. Why were they so insistent? The discovery of the Alcade should be recorded in the textbooks. Very soon, the new edition of textbooks would introduce the Alcade, stating that it was discovered by so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. They didn't want to be that waiting. What the few of them meant was, we will still donate, and we will not miss a single brick of the things we promised to donate. But we must have a share in this bounty, and our names must be added to the published news and authoritative reports. Flemington wasn't willing, so Feng Zhao had a chat with Flemington. The second time they had discussed the distribution of the bounty, Flemington had agreed to give Zero and the others a little something. When collecting the bounty, he would ask them to sign on the bounty confirmation form and allow them to take pictures together. The money they received wasn't much for those who came from super rich families, but they were very satisfied. When they were in a good mood, they even agreed to donate more. The Interplanetary Fund and the Spaceflight General Headquarters were very efficient. After the Alcade was unearthed, the big shots of the Interplanetary Fund had personally arrived. However, all unrelated personnel had been quarantined, and the program team personnel had been confined to their rooms, so they couldn't see what was happening. When the program team personnel came out again, most of the Interplanetary Fund personnel had already left. It was said that they had left with the black box on the spacecraft. The sound that Feng Zhao had heard previously had been heard again during the excavation of the Alcade. This time, it had been 7 days apart, and it had also lasted for 12 hours. It was a very regular signal. After the Interplanetary Fund had taken the black box away, Feng Zhao hadn't heard that sound again. As for the Alcade that had been left behind, because it wasn't convenient to take the spacecraft away, it had been left here temporarily. The people from the Spaceflight General Headquarters had said that it might be dismantled in the future and placed in a newly constructed memorial hall, so that it wouldn't be exposed to the sandstorms. The core technology of the Alcade had been taken away by the Interplanetary Fund, and what was left here was just an empty shell. But even so, this was still a rather rare experience for many people. The program team director had some ideas and sought out the Interplanetary Fund and the Spaceflight General Headquarters for a long time before obtaining the filming permit. However, there was a time limit, and they could only shoot one episode. One episode. So be it. The director was already very satisfied. This was also a gimmick. With the filming permit in hand, the director suddenly felt that his style had been elevated. In the past, he had only eaten vegetables. Now, he was suddenly eating abalone and sea cucumber. He still wasn't used to it. After being unreasonable for a while, the director became excited again and gathered the personnel to prepare for filming. How many variety show directors had the privilege of filming a show inside the Dream Team spaceship? That was the only one. Elsewhere, although the Interplanetary Fund had left, they had left some people behind to take care of the remaining work, including the matter of the reward. This time, a few authoritative media outlets also came over to take pictures. Flemington led Feng Zhao, Zero, and the others through the relevant procedures and signed in the confirmation area at the back of the reward form. The first signature was from Feng Zhao, and no one had any objections. The second signature was from Bu Base's representative, Commander Flemington, and no one had any objections either. The order of signature was decided by drawing lots. Barbara, Midacy, Wu Tianhao, and Zero. Even if Zero wasn't happy about being the last, he couldn't do anything about it. Who asked his luck to be so bad? Ahem. I heard that people have to wear masks when they receive the prize. Are we going to wear masks for the photo shoot later? Midacy asked. Zero looked at Midacy with a, "Are you stupid?" expression. The right to show one's face was snatched, and he still had to wear a mask? Midacy was just joking. With their status, there was really no need to hide it. During the photo shoot, Feng Zhao carried curly hair and stood in the middle with Flemington in the middle. Zero and the other three stood on either side. There was also a group photo at the back. A portion of the base's military officers and program team personnel were called. After the photos were taken, Midacy and the others were surprised to find out that Feng Zhao had donated the prize money to Bu Base. You really donated it all? Not a single cent left? Midacy could not understand why Feng Zhao would make such a decision. Even if Flemington had said that he would help Feng Zhao apply for military merits, this wasn't enough for Feng Zhao to be promoted. Besides, even if he was promoted, he wouldn't have any real power. As long as Feng Zhao didn't enter the military, he wouldn't be of much use. What was the point of donating tens of billions of dollars? To support Planet Bu's construction? Feng Zhao chuckled. To the others, this was just a joke and they wouldn't take it seriously. Tens of billions. Who would be so selfless? In the past, there were indeed wealthy people who donated tens of billions of assets, but that was only when they were dying. How old was Feng Zhao? Didn't he plan for his future? Feng Zhao did not explain further. After everyone dispersed, those who worked, rested, played, or patrolled, Feng Zhao returned to his room and gazed at the sky outside the window. Up until now, the third strategic military location on Planet Bu had basically been confirmed. Spaceflight General Headquarters had already selected the area and was just waiting for it to be announced. Feng Zhao smiled in gratification when he thought about the new aviation city, space city, and spaceflight experimental base that was about to be constructed on Planet Bu. Material and water brought life. Technology and culture determined the future. If there had been a second choice at that time, wouldn't the people from the period of destruction have a different future? Online, official media outlets reported news about the Alcade. Because of the program team director's activities, the first batch of reporters to report on the Alcade didn't mention the program team. Reporters from authoritative media outlets that came along with the Interplanetary Fund and Spaceflight General Headquarters had a more serious style and wouldn't report casually. The director discussed with them to first suppress the program team's news. After the first episode was released, it wouldn't matter anymore. The few reporters from the official media outlets insisted on reporting truthfully and in detail. However, they also agreed to give them time. Once the deadline was up, they would release a detailed draft. News about the Alcade sparked heated discussion on the internet. However, many people actually didn't realize the importance of this matter. They only followed along and discussed it when they saw the various official media outlets reporting on it. Compared to the significance of the Alcade itself, the public's focus was on that 100 billion. I just heard from an adventurer friend that the Interplanetary Fund's search for the Alcade Mission has a reward of 100 billion. This time, it was discovered by Bubase. Bubase is rich. Is this the legendary overnight riches? 2 days later, the buzz died down. Netizens who were paying attention to the entertainment section discovered that the first episode of Up Close Contact was about to be released. Everyone was rather expectant when they thought about the extravagant and gold-plated guest lineup. Of course, there were also people who felt bored. What's there to look at? Isn't it just the same old routine? In order to rally everyone to support impoverished areas, get everyone to willingly donate money, come up with a story about how poor they are, and play the emotional card. These types of programs are mostly like this. Would it be our turn to find places with real investment value? Just treat it as doing good deeds and donating some money. All the netizens felt that they were wise and far-sighted. They had seen through the program team's routine. It was time for the program to be updated. The first episode of the new episode was released. Regardless of what kind of attitude people had, they all clicked on it. The opening scene was completely different from the past. The biting cold and grand music made people shiver. A deep and resounding male voice that seemed to carry a boundless righteousness rang out. This is mankind's greatest adventure. The scene was a precious video and audio recording from 400 years ago. Ignition ready. System ready. Countdown commencing. 10, 9. Start main engine. 3, 2, 1. 7 spaceships rose into the sky. At the break of dawn, they were like 7 bright stars lighting up the sky as they began their journey into space. The spectacular scene and the extremely powerful accompanying music stirred the hearts of the people. However, the self-proclaimed wisest audience members in front of the screen were all stupefied. They exited and looked at the contents of the page. It was the variety show Up Close Contact without a doubt. They clicked on the page again. Huh? What happened to the promised poverty alleviation variety show? What happened to the promised entertainment show? With such a serious opening, I fucking thought that I had clicked on a documentary channel. 5 minutes later, the discussion section of the program's viewing page exploded. So this time, the program team's poverty alleviation target is the Bubase that just received 100 billion? Looking at the foreshadowing, Bubase was still a pitiful place before the program team arrived. It was only after the program team arrived that the base military discovered the arcade. Did the program team bring along the god of fortune? From a certain perspective, this can also be considered poverty alleviation. I just want to know how much money the program team can get. Then are we still going to donate this time? I feel like the nature has changed. This can't be called a donation anymore. A more festive call is a red packet. Very quickly, Bubase's donation section at the bottom of the program's viewing page turned red. Red packet. Congratulations to Bubase for becoming rich overnight. Red packet. Congratulations to Bubase for becoming rich overnight. Red packet. Let's freeload and hope we can win the next draw. Red packet. Greetings to the god of fortune. Chapter 397. The program's webpage was already flooded with red packets. Many people lamented. What kind of luck does Planet Boo have to have such a fortuitous encounter on such a small and poor base? The discovery of the arcade and the popularity brought about by the program team caused another heated discussion on the internet. In this episode of Up Close Contact, the old viewers were flabbergasted by the sudden toughness of the show's gentleness. In the past, the style of the program was cabbages. The ground is yellow. The cold wind is blowing. How miserable. This time, it was come on. Let the sandstorm be more violent. Even moving bricks had the power to topple mountains and overturn seas. The people of Lizhou, Lajou, and Tongzhou were deeply moved. Zero personally drove the excavator to dig the sand. Barbara cast aside her obsession with cleanliness to clean up the wreckage, and Wu Tianhao's hairstyle was completely messed up. These three usually paid the most attention to their appearances, but this time, they had sacrificed their image. Looking at their dusty faces in front of the camera, They were really helping the poor and not just going through the motions. The people of Majo were looking forward to Midas's first variety show after his retirement. Coupled with the filter effect of the surname Mars, it didn't matter if they were fans or not. They would shower him with a wave of bootlicking. As for Yinzhou netizens, pressing a titanium alloy keyboard. This time, it must be Feng Zhao who discovered the arcade. Our great Yinzhou's divine ears are no joke. Now that you put it that way, it does make sense. Rumor has it that Feng Zhao's ear has been coveted by the Academy of Science. I wonder if it's true. I also feel that the arcade incident has something to do with Feng Zhao. Does anyone have any information? Wang Tai, you piece of trash. Wang Tai, who had just revealed the secret marriage of a certain best actor, was speechless. What does this have to do with me? Wang Tai felt that he had to clear himself of this matter and not let others drag him into it. He hurriedly went online and posted, "Let's see how the authoritative media reports later on. Even if they don't say it clearly, we can still find clues from the photos. Their photos are the most convincing." Sure enough, after the first episode of Up Close Contact was broadcasted, 3 authoritative media outlets further reported on Planet Boo's arcade. Although they had already concealed the discovery process of the arcade, the photos that were released allowed wise and far-sighted netizens to discover the hidden evidence. It's confirmed. It was official evidence. Feng Zhao was always in the center position in the group photos of the bounty hunters. Let me explain. Of the 2 people standing in the middle of the photo, one is Feng Zhao, and the other is Bu Base Commanding Officer Flemington. To be able to stand together with the base commanding officer, they are definitely people who played an important role in this arcade excavation operation. Feng Zhao even brought a dog. Am I the only one who cares about the bounty? If he stands together with Commander Flemington, won't Feng Zhao receive the same bounty as Bu Base? Even if it's less than half, it should be 30 to 40 billion, right? TSK, Feng Zhao has become a super tycoon in one go? A true aristocratic family without a doubt. Many people felt like they were dreaming when they saw this. How old was Feng Zhao? Suddenly, his net worth was tens of billions? Yinzhou, Yinbei Retirement Facility. Coincidentally, there was an event going on in Yinbei City, and the reporters were interviewing retired veterans. After the incident with the arcade and Feng Zhao came out, when the reporters interviewed great-grandfather Feng, they specifically asked him about his stance on the matter. In front of the camera, great-grandfather Feng held onto 2 walnuts with a serious expression. Little Zhao's participation in a variety show during his advanced studies? Right, I know. He told me about it. I definitely wouldn't let him participate in other variety shows. But this is different. Supporting impoverished areas is a good thing. It should be encouraged. So what if it's a little tough and tiring? Now that little Zhao is a public figure, if he can do his bit for the troops stationed in impoverished areas, we will all strongly support him. Great-grandmother Feng had a dignified smile on her face. The reporters sighed in their hearts. Just look at how enlightened she is. At the end of the interview, great-grandfather Feng casually said, "I even personally went to Huangzhou's spaceport to send him off. It wasn't easy for this child to travel so far. We were so worried. Look, these are all photos we took in Huangzhou." Great-grandfather Feng flaunted the photos he had taken with Feng Zhao in Huangzhou. The backgrounds ranged from Huang Art Academy to Huangzhou's Cemetery of Martyrs to the spaceport. Great-grandfather Feng even wore different t-shirts. However, the reporter's focus was on one of the photos. They pointed and asked, "Is this a fortune pouch?" Great-grandfather Feng took a look and nodded. "That's right. Before we went to Huangzhou, we requested for a new fortune pouch to be delivered to him at the cemetery." After the interview ended, people who had seen the interview forwarded the video to their friends and family. That's right. Feng Zhao's luck was so good. He definitely had the blessing of a fortune pouch. Thus, Yinzhou's cemetery, which had just cooled down a little, was flooded again. The same type of fortune pouch was sold out. The dream of 10 billion yuan was still a must. What if it came true? All in all, the program team of Up Close Contact was in the limelight this time. Broadcasting platforms discovered that the number of people who had pre-ordered the second episode of Up Close Contact had tripled compared to the first, and it was still increasing. To maintain popularity, the program team even announced at the end of the first episode that the next episode would be filmed on the Alcade. This smugness directly caused a group of archaeologists, astronomers, and others to besiege him. Nonsense. What a waste. Complaints. We definitely have to complain. Even if the Spaceflight General Headquarters didn't care, would the Interplanetary Fund not care? That was their trump card back in the day. How could they have the heart to leave the Alcade for a variety program team to trample on? However, some of the high-level technical researchers understood in their hearts. The Alcade's true core technical area had definitely been moved away by the Interplanetary Fund. Even if the Interplanetary Fund hadn't moved everything away, the Spaceflight General Headquarters would have screened it again. What was left was just an empty shell. Even so, this was enough to satisfy the curiosity of people who didn't know the ropes. Of the 7 spaceships of the Dream Team back then, other than the Alcade, only 2 remained. The only one that was displayed in the exhibition hall had been dismantled. Visitors couldn't enter the cabin and could only look at it from the outside. It wasn't as attractive as a complete spaceship. Compared to the excitement on the internet, the Interplanetary Fund was much more serious. Basement 15 of the Interplanetary Fund's headquarters was an absolute forbidden ground. Many middle and high-level managers didn't have the qualifications to enter this place. Most people didn't even know this place existed because the elevators that were open to them only went to basement 10. Many people didn't even know how many floors there were below basement 10 even after leaving the Interplanetary Fund. At this moment, basement 15, the atmosphere was solemn. There were close to 50 people here. Some looked young, while others had white hair and wrinkles all over their faces. Among them, the Interplanetary Fund's current chairman, Mesha was standing at the back with a few other directors. Regardless of how impressive they usually were outside, at this moment, they were as obedient as grandchildren. Even their breathing became cautious, as though they were treading on thin ice. At the head of the group was a young woman. She held a round metal object the size of a palm in her hands as she walked towards an oval cabin that was slowly rising. The round metal object and the cabin both had the image of a malevolent bear head. After verifying her identity, a round hole opened up in the oval cabin, just enough for her to place the metal object in her hands inside. Sigh. Ice-cold gas dispersed in all directions as the cabin disintegrated. After the white fog dissipated, everyone could clearly see the person standing there. He looked like an ordinary and slightly chubby 10-year-old boy. The moment the boy opened his eyes, the current chairman, Mesha took a deep breath and felt goosebumps all over his body. A chill ran down his spine. This was one of the Interplanetary Fund's trump cards, superintelligence. Although he had previously heard about superintelligence from a few retired seniors, he only realized the disparity between what he had expected and what he had expected when he saw it for himself. Those artificial intelligence products, even the most top-notch ones, didn't give him this kind of hair-raising feeling. Those eyes brimming with vitality and emotions that were almost indistinguishable from a human's. Just by looking at this person in front of him, who would know that beneath the surface was a mechanical core. The other Interplanetary Fund seniors were much calmer. "Welcome home, little bear." The woman at the head of the group smiled. "You've worked hard." The little fatty called Little Bear blinked, and a glint flashed across his quick-witted eyes. The Interplanetary Fund seniors knew that this was him analyzing the newly received information. There was no need to say anything more. He could use the internet to obtain the information he wanted to know. Before this, they had also transferred a portion of the Interplanetary Fund's internal information that couldn't be found on the internet to him. "It's already been so long." The crisp voice of a child carried a sigh that didn't match his age. "Yes, this is the new body that grandfather made for you according to your request. He has been taking care of it all these years. Do you like it?" The woman at the head of the group asked. The little fatty used his chubby hand to poke his stomach and smiled. "I like it." After admiring his new body, the little fatty looked at the woman in front of him for a long time and suddenly said, "Suehua, Everyone from the Interplanetary Fund lowered their heads in unison, not daring to look at their big boss's expression. The name Tsuehua was personally given to her by the founder of the Interplanetary Fund, the chief engineer, chief designer, and chief commander of the Dream Team Spaceflight Project, Master Hong Xian. It was said that Master Hong Xian had a deep love for rural literature. Because he valued this granddaughter of his, he personally gave her the name Tsuehua. After Master Hong Xian passed away, the Interplanetary Fund didn't dare to mock this name and used other names instead. They even called him the Great Demon King behind his back. How many years had it been to hear someone call him this name? How gutsy. As expected of a superintelligence, he dared to provoke the Great Demon King. As if sensing the awkward atmosphere, the little fatty blinked and changed his name. Little Hua, everyone from the Interplanetary Fund lowered their heads even more and stared at the floor as if there was a mine beneath their feet. Awkward atmosphere too. Zero. After a while, the woman standing at the head of the table said, "What's the matter? I seem to have forgotten something." With that, Fatty raised his right hand, palm facing upward, and even whistled. Interplanetary Fund. Silence. Awkward atmosphere 3-0. The senior executives looked at each other. After working together for so long, they could understand each other's intentions with just a look. What does this little fatty mean by extending his hand? Is the thinking of a superintelligence too advanced, or am I really getting old? Don't tell me we have to give red packets for this kind of meeting? Red packets? I didn't prepare anything. I didn't prepare anything either. What should I do? If I don't give it, will he cry? I have no experience dealing with superintelligence. Should I just transfer the money or package it as cash? Who still carries cash these days? Should I give him something else? Let's see what the Great Demon King does. Let's just follow his lead. The senior executives exchanged glances and finally reached an agreement. They all looked at the person at the head of the table. The big boss didn't understand either. What do you want? Where's Little Riches? I didn't discover him within my scanning range. Did you guys see him? What's Riches? My pet. The superintelligence, Little Bear, pointed at his fingers guiltily. I created him when I was bored. I remember that Master Hong Xian once issued a death order. Without permission, none of you are allowed to create advanced intelligent objects. An old man couldn't help but say. Under everyone's condemning gazes, Little Bear looked aggrieved and hurriedly defended himself. No, he can't reach the level of advanced intelligence. He's just a retarded toy that can avoid obstacles. Did you guys forget him on the spaceship? Chapter 398. The Interplanetary Fund couldn't help but pay attention to the fact that a superintelligence had created an intelligence of an unknown level. After leading Little Bear to the warehouse for a round, a group of senior management also got into action. They checked every step of the way and confirmed that the Little Riches wasn't among the items brought back from the Alcade and that it wasn't lost during transportation. I lost Little Riches. Little Bear was alarmed. Should I go to Planet Boo to look for it? The Interplanetary Fund discussed for a while. Big Boss ordered Little Bear to whistle to the people left behind on Planet Boo. If Little Riches heard this signal, it would appear. What if it doesn't appear? Will it be caught by others? We have to be on guard against the Spaceflight General Headquarters and Boo Base, an old man suggested. It won't. At this point, Little Bear's alarmed expression became calm again. Little Riches has mastered over 300 types of escape techniques. Furthermore, it is made of special materials. Ordinary weapons won't be able to harm it. If it wakes up after charging and discovers that I'm not around, it will immediately look for nearby creatures to use as cover. Small, weak, and low-intelligence creatures will be prioritized. That's good. The Interplanetary Fund was slightly relieved. They had finally found the last lost superintelligence, and the only one they could come into close contact with. The Interplanetary Fund was rather lenient toward Little Bear. Little Bear first went to pay his respects to his deceased master, the founder of the Interplanetary Fund, Master Hong Xian. Little Bear had made preparations long ago when he had received the mission to leave this planet. Thus, Little Bear wasn't too sad when he paid his respects. Little Bear wanted to familiarize himself with the environment after returning to this planet after 400 years. Director General Mesha was apprehensive when he was called over by Big Boss. He was afraid that he had done something wrong and would be demoted. This is Mesha, the current Interplanetary Fund's Director General. Little Bear, you can follow him and familiarize yourself with him for a period of time. There are huge changes compared to 400 years ago. I will give you a week to get used to it. 1 month. Little kids need holidays. Little Bear started to haggle. I'm afraid of the dark after being trapped in a dark sand pit for a long time. I might even suffer from claustrophobia. I want to go to a wider and brighter place to recuperate. Interplanetary Fund staff, stop bullshitting. Do you want us to throw the spacecraft's record in your face? Did he really think he was a child? He was a brat who could play with the energy red line and had no choice but to hibernate after the spacecraft had met with a mishap. Claustrophobia, my ass. Just say that you want to go out and have fun after sleeping for too long. Finally, the big boss said, 15 days. Come back to work in 15 days. It wasn't that the Interplanetary Fund was strict, but that they had to keep a close eye on superintelligences at all times. It was impossible for them to take long vacations, especially for the one in front of them. Given time, he would cause trouble. Planet Boo, beside the sandpit where the Alcade was located. Feng Zhao followed the program crew into the Alcade to record the program. Due to the limited number of people, Nanfeng and the others couldn't follow them in. They waited in the resting area with their dogs. Curly Hair wasn't willing to stay in the house. He wasn't afraid of the heat either, so he lay outside the door and played with the sand. Suddenly, Curly Hair's ears twitched. He stood up abruptly and stared at the sand. Woof, woof, woof. As he shouted, Curly Hair wanted to take a few steps forward, but he was held back by the rope. Nanfeng, who was chatting with Yin Biao and Zuiyu in the room, was startled and hurried out. What happened? Nanfeng followed Curly Hair's line of sight. Something was running towards them from under the sand. Yin Biao and Zuiyu, who had run out after hearing the commotion, became alert and gestured for Nanfeng to bring Curly Hair in. However, Curly Hair didn't cooperate. His gaze was fixed on the sand, and Nanfeng couldn't move him no matter how hard he tried. Nanfeng couldn't be bothered with why he couldn't move a dog as he watched that thing get closer and closer. He shielded Curly Hair behind him. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The thing under the sand finally emerged. It was a flat, oval-shaped black bug with several legs and 2 long antennae. The moment it popped its head out, 3 pitch-black gun barrels were pointed at it. The black bug's 2 antennae gradually stiffened. Then, with a whoosh, its legs and antennae retracted, and its body curled up into a black ball the size of a tennis ball. Nanfeng and the other 2 stared at that black ball, but didn't see it move for a long time. Curly Hair ran over and swiped with his claws, and the black ball rolled forward. Seeing this, Curly Hair excitedly chased after the ball. Nanfeng, who was holding onto the leash, ran forward. Hey, Curly Hair, stop, don't run. Curly Hair caught up to the ball and swiped with his claws again, sending the black ball flying. Curly Hair became even more excited. In another resting area not far away, the people there watched Nanfeng being dragged by a dog from the window and said disdainfully, "Look at Feng Zhao's useless assistant next door. He can't even hold back a dog." When Feng Zhao came out of the Alcade after recording today's mission, he immediately saw Curly Hair chasing after the ball and Nanfeng, who was on the verge of tears, following behind him. "What are you doing?" Feng Zhao berated. Curly Hair's ears twitched. He didn't grasp the angle of his claws well, and the black ball flew to the other side. Midas had just finished recording and was drenched in sweat. His assistant was holding a fan and blowing at him. Midas still felt that the wind wasn't strong enough, so he took out the commemorative light alloy fan given to him by Bubase. He had just started fanning himself when he heard someone shout, "Careful!" Seeing the black ball flying over, Midas reflexively swung his fan over. His posture was precise and his reaction was godly. One look and it was obvious that he was a professional. The black ball was sent flying again. Midas's eyes lit up. The fatigue from recording the program was swept away. Io, this ball feels good. My hands have been itching for a long time. Midas turned to his assistant and said, "Go, get my racket." The ball flew in the direction of Wu Tianhao's side. Wu Tianhao's interest was piqued when he saw Midas swinging the ball. He took out the commemorative alloy fan given to him by Bu Base and used it as a racket. Midas, who had already obtained the racket, saw the ball being forcefully swung back and shouted, "Good move." Bam! The black ball was sent flying again with great precision. Wu Tianhao received this ball with great difficulty and shouted, "Zero, come over quickly." Midas, this fellow is a professional. We amateurs have to work together. Hey, watch me. Zero happily picked up the fan and joined in. The program team's director shook his head and chuckled when he saw this scene. Youngsters. The cameraman didn't need to say much. He captured this rare, friendly match in the desert. Finally, Midas swung a ball over. Zero didn't receive it, and the ball flew over to a spaceflight general headquarters leader who had come over to inspect. The leader frowned and picked up the black ball from the ground. He squeezed it and found that it was rather soft. Curly Hair, who was closest, snorted and walked over quickly. He stared at the ball in the leader's hand. He then raised his head to look at the rowdy group over there and berated with a straight face. "Don't throw dog toys around." Nanfeng hurriedly apologized. Sorry. I will definitely take note." The other managers also came over to express their attitudes. They would definitely take note next time. Seeing that everyone was apologetic, the spaceflight general headquarters leader's expression eased up. He squeezed the black ball in his hand again before handing it over to Nanfeng. He couldn't help but ask, "Where did you buy this ball?" Nanfeng stuttered, I don't know." The leader didn't get angry when he didn't get the answer he wanted. Forget it. It wasn't anything important anyway. I'll just go back and check on the internet. The leader waved his hand and let them leave. After Nanfeng received the ball, Curly Hair tugged at his pants and asked for it. Curly Hair was very obedient this time. He wagged his tail and followed Nanfeng back. Along the way, Midas and the others tried to borrow the ball, but Curly Hair didn't let them play. After returning to the resting area, Nanfeng told Feng Zhao about the black ball. Feng Zhao took the black ball from Curly Hair's mouth and squeezed it. It was indeed very soft, and he couldn't tell what material it was made of. However, even after suffering so many hits from Curly Hair's claws, being hit like a tennis ball by Midas and the others, and being held in Curly Hair's mouth, its surface was still as smooth as new. Planet Boo organism? No. He had a feeling that this wasn't a normal living organism. Curly Hair whimpered pitifully at the side. He looked at Feng Zhao and then stared pitifully at the ball. Curly Hair seems to like this toy a lot. Nanfeng realized that he had been led astray. This wasn't a real ball. It was a bug. Feng Zhao considered it for a bit before returning the black ball to Curly Hair. He told Nanfeng and the others, "Keep it first. Keep an eye on it." "Yes, boss." Elsewhere, the spaceflight general headquarters leader on patrol was still thinking, "I wonder what that little black ball is made of. It feels really good. I'll buy a few more for my kids and dog to play with when I get back." As he was thinking, he saw someone walking over and his face darkened. "Didn't you go over to the base?" The person who had come over was the Interplanetary Fund's person in charge who had remained on Planet Boo. The spaceflight general headquarters and the Interplanetary Fund had a cooperative relationship, but there was also competition. For example, the Alcade's core technology. They had thought about it for a long time, but hadn't been able to touch it. They had already reacted quickly this time, but who knew that the Interplanetary Fund would still beat them to it? They hadn't even seen the shadow of the black box. It would be strange if they had a good expression now. The Interplanetary Fund person in charge, who had remained on Planet Boo, wasn't in the mood to say much. He smiled and headed over to the Alcade. When he entered the Alcade once again, the person in charge instructed his subordinates to stand guard outside while he played the audio he had just received. After waiting for a while, there was still no movement. Unwilling to give up, he tried a few more regions near the Alcade. Because this was a secret operation, he didn't dare search openly or tell anyone else. Even his own subordinates didn't know what he was looking for. He could only wait anxiously. Why didn't such an important object have a GPS? After playing the audio for 3 days and expanding the region, there wasn't even a shadow of the object. Helpless, he could only report this result. The soldiers guarding this region had also heard the whistles over the past 3 days. Because they were a distance away each time, they couldn't see clearly and thought that it was the Interplanetary Fund personnel whistling. They even joked in private. The Interplanetary Fund personnel looked serious, but it turns out that they also like to whistle. They even whistle nursery rhymes. How childish. The Interplanetary Fund person in charge who heard the rumors. Forget it. I'll take the blame for this. Several days later, the highly anticipated second episode of Up Close Contact was broadcasted. It was indeed filmed on the arcade and satisfied many people's curiosity. It was just that Interplanetary Fund headquarters. Director General Mesh Assis pointed at a certain scene in the program where the black ball was being beaten around and asked, "Is it that one?" Little Bear, who was also staring with wide eyes, replied, "Yes." Didn't they say that it has over 300 escape techniques? Didn't they say that it can avoid humans and seek cover? It really does. Then what about this situation? The pseudo-death program has been activated. Under the doubtful gazes of the Interplanetary Fund personnel, Little Fatty explained with a humiliated expression, "To put it simply, it's just like many animals when they encounter danger, faking death and shutting down in a defensive state." The Interplanetary Fund personnel heaved a sigh of relief. It was indeed a retarded robot toy for it to shut down so easily. However, according to Little Bear, the materials used for that retarded robot toy were very special, and it had to be retrieved as soon as possible. The materials and technology could not be leaked. Little Bear scratched his head. He was also bewildered. Theoretically speaking, unless it encountered a natural predator, Little Riches wouldn't have activated its highest defensive state so easily. Could it be that too much time had passed and the components malfunctioned? Forget it. I'll just wait for the Interplanetary Fund personnel to bring Little Riches back and upgrade it. As for now, forget it. It's time for holidays. Time to go out and have fun. Speak Cliché update time is uncertain, but it will be as soon as possible. Chapter 399. The Interplanetary Fund's current chairman, Mesh Assis, felt that he had taken on a thorny task. After considering many candidates, consulting the higher-ups and discussing with Little Bear, he called his son, Danky Assis, over worriedly. Danky, who had just returned home from a boat race with a bunch of scoundrels, received a call from his father. Danky wondered what important matter made him call so urgently. He hadn't caused any trouble recently, and there weren't any major issues at home. As he pondered over the reason his father had called him over, Danky arrived at the Interplanetary Fund's headquarters and entered the office belonging to Chairman Mesh Assis. The moment he entered, he saw a child dressed like a bear sitting on the sofa, swinging his legs. His heart skipped a beat. Who made this child? He cast a suspicious glance at his father and was glared back. Mesh Assis coughed lightly and introduced, "This is Little Bear. Bring him along to play for the next few days." Danky wasn't happy. Whose child is this? How many days is a few days? Mesh raised his hand and pointed upwards. Danky's pupils constricted. His previous sloppy demeanor vanished as he sat up straight. He was extremely excited. This was a mission from the higher-ups. Wasn't it just to bring a child to play? He wasn't good at anything else, but when it came to playing, he was good at it. Being able to take on this mission meant that his name had already been registered at the higher-ups. Perhaps he could enter the core management even earlier. His other siblings hadn't even squeezed in yet. Bring him along for a week first. Bring him wherever he wants to play, Mesh said. Just a week? No problem. Danky glanced at the child sitting on the sofa, staring at him, and accepted the mission. Mesh looked at his son, wanting to say something but hesitating. His expression was complicated as he opened his mouth and said, "Just try your best. Don't worry. Isn't it just bringing him to eat, drink, and play? I can arrange that. No, you don't have to worry about eating and drinking. He will tell you what he wants to eat. Just bring him along wherever he wants to play for the next few days. You don't have to worry about anything else." Mesh exhorted some matters that needed to be taken note of. Although Danke was extremely puzzled, he knew that when it came to matters of the Interplanetary Fund, he shouldn't ask what he shouldn't. If he asked too much, he might not be able to enter the core management. "All right, understood," Danke guaranteed. "I will definitely complete the mission." Danke walked to the sofa, squatted down and revealed what he believed to be his friendliest and most amiable smile. "Hello, I am Danke Assis. You are Little Bear, right?" Little Bear looked at Danke for a while and smiled innocently. "Hello, Dandan." "Danke, this child is really not likable." Regardless of his first impression, Danke accepted the mission. He picked up the luggage that his father had handed him and brought Little Bear out with him. After entering the car, Danke asked, "Where are we going to play first?" "Let's fly one round around the Imperial City first," Little Bear said. "Sure." Danke wouldn't have any complaints even if he had to fly one round around Huangzhou, let alone around the Imperial City. Anyway, if this matter was done well, there would definitely be benefits. The child of the leader's family would be treated like an ancestor. Mesh stood by the office window and sighed as he watched the flashy flying car rise and fly away from downstairs. He wondered how long his youngest son could last against a superintelligence. 2 days later, Mesh was handling some documents and wasn't surprised to hear that Danke had come looking for him. He said to his assistant, "Let him in." "Father." Danke let out a long scream and ran in. He squatted down and hugged Mesh's leg. "You are my biological father." There was a bruise around one of Danke's eyes and words were written on his face. The left side of his face read "bastard" and the right side read "egg." His usually exquisitely styled fringe was now a mess on his forehead. Tears flickered in his eyes. Mesh took a look inside. "Speak the truth." Danke took a deep breath and pointed to the words on his face. "I lost in a game." He then pointed to his bruised eye. "I was woken up from sleep and my tone was a little bad. I got beaten up." "Father, did this child grow up eating bears?" "He was too strong." He couldn't beat him in a game and wasn't as strong as a child in a fight. This was the first time Danke had suffered such a blow. Mesh knew his son very well. He was well aware of how much Danke's words could be trusted. He had definitely been beaten up because Danke had stayed in bed and had a bad temper when he woke up. In the end, he had met a tough opponent and was beaten up instead. A superintelligence could be used as a weapon of war. In comparison, Danke had only suffered a bruised eye. This couldn't even be considered a joke. Therefore, Mesh replied with an expressionless "oh" in response to Danke's tearful complaint. "If you can't do this mission, I will hand it over to someone else." "Don't," Danke hurriedly said. He had only come over to let his father and the Interplanetary Fund leaders know how difficult it was to raise that child and to let them see how hard it was for him. He didn't really want to give up on this mission. "Father, is that really from the great leader's family?" Danke asked in a low voice.
"Yes."
Mesh nodded. The children of the great leader's family are indeed different. Danke's expression turned solemn. He stood up and pushed his messy fringe behind his head. "Don't worry, I can still persevere. With such acting skills, even if you can't squeeze into the core, you can still join the entertainment industry," Mesh said with a wooden face. "Heh." Danke laughed awkwardly and jumped up to stretch his arms. "Then I will head back. I have given my video platform account to that child to watch a series. He rather likes Founding Era. The entire series has so many episodes that it will take him a long time to watch." At the mention of the entire series of Founding Era, Danke praised his own wit. "Why am I so smart?" He reckoned that the child probably wouldn't even have finished a chapter by the time the mission was up. "Don't think of him as simple. You just do your best," Mesh emphasized once again. "Hi, don't worry. Danke waved his hands and hurried back. He had taken the opportunity while that little brat was watching a series to come over and make his presence known. However, when he returned home, Danke realized that this little brat's viewing speed was a little too fast. He had been watching the Founding Era Shijo chapter before heading out. How had it been the Yinjo chapter when he returned? A round trip would take at most an hour, right? Looking at Little Bear, who was currently watching the Yinjo chapter, he could barely hold back his tears. Danke changed into a pair of slippers and turned around. He saw Little Bear's tears retract at a speed visible to the naked eye. His reddened eyes had returned to normal, and there wasn't a single trace of him crying. Danke had a horrified look on his face. So tears can really be held back. Following which, he suffered another blow. His acting skills actually couldn't even compare to a child's. Really good acting, Little Bear exclaimed. Of course. Look at what kind of cast and crew Founding Era is. Oh right, Little Bear, after watching so many episodes, which actor do you like the most? Danke asked after regaining his senses. Feng Zhao. Feng Zhao? Why? Real. TSK. He is an actor. Aren't they all acting? How can there be any realism? Then his acting is the most realistic. What does a child know about realism? I want his autograph. I don't have one. I will help you buy one online. I want to take a photo with him. He is filming on a foreign planet and can't come back. Why? Are you learning from others and chasing stars? Chasing stars will make you retarded. Danke threatened. You are chasing stars? Little Bear turned around and asked. What do you mean? This brat isn't cute at all. Seeing that the other party wasn't replying, Danke asked, Are you going to continue watching the series, or do you want to play something else? Watching the series. Sure, you can continue watching. Call me if you need anything. There is food in the fridge. If you are hungry or thirsty, go find it yourself. Don't stand on ceremony. I will return to my room to catch up on some sleep. Little Bear, who was staring at the screen, raised his hand and waved without even turning his head. Danke returned to his room and took a shower. He washed away the words on his face, applied some medicine to his eyes, and took a good afternoon nap. When he woke up, he realized that Little Bear was watching a concert. Feng Zhao's concert video. Danke yawned and muttered to himself, Not watching the series anymore? Kids are so fickle. He scrolled through his own video platform account and checked his viewing history. Looking at the long history, Danke was shocked awake. He had watched every chapter of Founding Era in its entirety. He had even searched out the editing and interviews of the series. Danke checked the time and confirmed that he had only slept for 2 hours and not 2 months. Danke guessed that the brat had skipped through the video and stretched his neck to take a look. That brat was watching the concert seriously and didn't look like he wanted to fast forward. Danke exited the recording room and sent his father a message. That brat is chasing stars. Is there a problem? Mesh immediately replied with a video call. What's going on? Just like that. See? He is watching a video of Feng Zhao's concert. He even said that he wanted Feng Zhao's autograph and wanted to take a photo with him. When Feng Zhao returns from recording, I reckon he will go look for him. Dad, what's wrong? Actually, it's just chasing stars. Look at how scared you are. On the other end of the video call, Interplanetary Fund Director General Mesh Assis, who had been entrusted with an important task, was pale and drenched in cold sweat. He didn't immediately reply to Danke's question. After ending the video call, he sent a message. Get him to stay far away from Feng Zhao during the mission. No, as far away as possible. Don't go near him. Mesh was worried. Little Bear only looked like a human, but he was actually the core of a superintelligence. If Feng Zhao's ears were too close, Mesh was worried that Feng Zhao would hear something. Danke frowned when he received his father's message. His gaze swept across the little figure in the recording room. Cough, Little Bear, let's change stars to chase. Look at that. The news just came out. Feng Zhao donated tens of billions to Boo Base. Little Bear suddenly said. What? Danke was so shocked by Little Bear's words that he forgot what he had wanted to say. He searched the internet and discovered that this matter wasn't fabricated. Many authoritative media outlets had reported on it. There were two pieces of news regarding Bubase. One was that Bubase was about to construct its third largest military base, and that the planet was already on lockdown. The second was that Feng Zhao didn't keep a single cent of the reward for discovering the Alcade and donated it all to Bubase. Is this person stupid? Is there something wrong with his brain? The bounty was so huge. Why not donate it all to Bubase? What could be more valuable than that? Danke couldn't understand. Was it worth it? At the same time, in Yinzhou's Yinbei retirement facility, great-grandfather Feng had also seen this news. His hands were trembling and his lips were trembling. In an instant, he imagined all kinds of swindling and using one's power to oppress others. Great-grandfather Feng, who was selectively blind and biased to no end, cried, "My family's little Zhao must have suffered grievances. Grievances of the heavens. Bad intentions. All bad intentions." Chapter 400. Great-grandfather Feng wasn't the only one who thought this way. Many people who saw today's news would wonder if there was some sort of transaction behind this. Otherwise, who would be willing to donate tens of billions of dollars? Tens of billions of dollars. How much could it be exchanged for? Furthermore, Feng Zhao's current identity was an artist. What was the point of donating so much money to Bubase's construction? Firstly, he wouldn't have any power, and secondly, he wouldn't be promoted. Wouldn't he have to leave some for himself? However, regardless of what many people thought in private, the various authoritative media outlets were very happy to report this news. This benchmark had to be set up. Look at how enlightened people are. Was this something an ordinary person could do? While discussions were raging online, on Planet Boo, the Little Rich's black sphere had been returned. The Interplanetary Fund had come knocking after seeing the new episode of the variety show. Feng Zhao didn't say much and returned the black sphere. Curly Hair had nothing to play with and was searching for toys all over the desert. All sorts of lively creatures in the desert were his targets. After playing with them for a while, he would secretly eat them. In the following period of time, besides recording programs, composing songs, writing theses, etc., Feng Zhao also applied for all sorts of pilot certificates for fighter aircrafts, armed flying transports, armored combat vehicles, etc. He had been very interested in piloting the Alcade that day when he had been filming the program on the Alcade. However, given his current status, he still couldn't apply for this level of pilot certificate. Because of his contributions and donations, he didn't get a promotion, but his merits were recorded. Feng Zhao's application for a pilot certificate went through the expedited review process. In less than an hour, everything that could be approved was approved. Following that, Feng Zhao took some time to attend classes with the soldiers in the military to learn relevant theories and practical driving practice. The people of Bubase discovered that Feng Zhao was a person who learned theory quickly, but he was even faster when it came to practical driving. In other people's eyes, Feng Zhao had talent in this area and was extremely talented. But the truth was that Feng Zhao had come into contact with a lot of things during the period of destruction. Although it wasn't as advanced back then, and the various operations weren't as intelligent, there wasn't a need for any certificates or applications. Those who had the ability could do it, and those who didn't had to brace themselves for survival. This was how a person's potential was forced out. However, other people didn't know that Bubase Commanding Officer Flemington had sighed countless times. What a pity. A talent like Feng Zhao should have remained in the military and not become some artist. What a waste of talent. Nanfeng, Zuiyu, and Yin Biao watched impatiently as Feng Zhao took all sorts of driving tests. They had also applied for one, but the review process was slow, and there were even more restrictions. Watching another squadron of fighter jets fly past, Yin Biao said enviously, "Back when I was on Planet Baiji, I didn't have the means to touch this model. After Planet Baiji developed, I also retired. I didn't expect that I would be so close to these new models. Our application should be approved in the next 2 days. However, we won't get as many applications as the boss," Nanfeng said. Different models of military aircrafts and fighter jets would have different piloting requirements. In the Army, The division would be more detailed, and the assessment would be stricter. So you thought of something. Our boss took all sorts of tests here. The issuing authority should be Bubase? This was Bubase, which was going to become the third most important military location in the future. The value of a certificate issued here would increase with the construction of Bubase in the future. This was not something an ordinary private or business certificate could compare to. After a long silence, the three of them said in unison, "How envious! How many licenses has our boss obtained so far?" Nanfeng asked. "He just obtained the 7th one today." Yen Biao remembered clearly. "How many more do you think he will get when the program filming ends? There's no end to the tests. Our boss is addicted to them. I even saw him flipping through books on engines yesterday. Will he take the test for a technician or something in the future?" What a crazy certification demon. Nanfeng decided to introduce himself to others in the future. "My boss is an artist who is passionate about certification. As for now, let's just walk the dog first." After Fang Zhao finished his round, he was stopped by Flemington for a chat. Recently, Flemington had been in high spirits because Bubase was about to become the third most important military location. He didn't want to be transferred anymore and would fight anyone who wanted to transfer him. This was the third most important military location. When the time came, it wouldn't be his turn to be the boss here, but his position definitely wouldn't be low. He would also have even more authority. Everything else went smoothly except for Fang Zhao. Flemington wanted to persuade Fang Zhao to stay here and develop. As the current commanding officer of the base, he still had some authority. However, Fang Zhao refused. Seeing Fang Zhao's outstanding test results over the past few days, Flemington still wasn't satisfied and personally came over to stop him. Flemington pointed to the front and drew a circle. In the future, a test flight field will be built here. Every day, there will be countless new types of fighter jets taking off and landing. A new spaceport is already in the midst of construction, and over there, Flemington brought Fang Zhao to look at the desert and the sky. They talked about life and ideals, from fighter armor to spaceships. He couldn't wait to lure Fang Zhao into the base. However, Fang Zhao was still unwavering in his pursuit of music. The more he chatted with Fang Zhao, the more Flemington felt that this kid had great talent and bold vision. A close friend, a talent. Why did he have to go and become a music artist? What a waste. Some people wouldn't be able to become winners in life even if they were given 10 golden fingers. There were also some people who could soar into the clouds if given a chance. In Flemington's eyes, Fang Zhao was the latter. It was a pity that Fang Zhao's ambitions didn't lie here. Flemington sighed with every step he took. He sat on a rock that had been transformed into a peculiar shape by the wind and gazed at the flying dust in the distance. "Fang Zhao, how do you feel about this trip to Bu? What do you feel most fortunate about?" Flemington thought that Fang Zhao would mention the alcade and the bounty. Fang Zhao chuckled. "Being alive. I still don't know how wonderful the future will be." As he was speaking, Fang Zhao received a notification about his internet access time. Due to Planet Bu's construction period, the internet access time wasn't fixed and would change due to new construction projects. The program team had to wait for notification if they wanted to go online, and the internet access time wasn't very long. Since Fang Zhao received the notification, Zero and the others naturally received it as well. Fang Zhao watched as the people who had been looking for fun rushed to the base's soldiers to borrow cars as if they were in high spirits. Flemington shook his head as he watched. "This bunch of people are really lively," Fang Zhao said. "Flemington, lively then so be it." Fang Zhao got up and bade farewell. He also had to return to the base. He wanted to chat with great-grandfather and great-grandmother when he got internet access. Otherwise, the two elders would surely be worried. Over at the base, Zero and the others immediately got into action after receiving the notification. Currently, Planet Bu was very busy. Flying transports were all useful, and there weren't any that could be rented. They could only borrow cars. It wasn't easy to borrow a car either. Otherwise, they would have to wait for a large vehicle to pick up the program team. That would take at least half an hour. For people who were in a hurry to go online, it would be great if they could save this half an hour. Barbara borrowed a patrol car that could carry small cargo from a squad of soldiers and got her assistant to quickly drive it away. Zero and the others came over a step too late. The soldier replied coldly, "No." Wu Tianhao stomped his foot. They were still in discussion when they entered, but when they found out that great-grandfather Fong was on the call with Feng Zhao, they stopped talking and pricked up their ears to listen. They were also curious about what Feng Zhao was thinking. Great-grandfather Fong listened to Feng Zhao's explanation, and the worry on his face gradually dissipated. "Really? How many types of fighter jets have you already gotten the certification? Hey, do you have that thing over there?" Great-grandfather Fong mentioned a few new types of fighter jets that had been recently reported in the military news. Feng Zhao said that he had tried out 2 of them. As Planet Boo was still in the initial stages of construction, there were fewer models, so he had taken all the certifications that he could. Great-grandfather Feng's lips curled up continuously when he found out that Feng Zhao had taken all sorts of certifications and that he had even piloted a new type of fighter jet. Good, good, good. Oh my. You even piloted a submarine? Not bad, not bad. Right, there is also that new type of combat equipment that will be shipped to Planet Boo in the future. Even if you can't get the certification, if you can touch it, then touch it. Can't you take the test for piloting a warship? No problem, there's no rush. Let's take it step by step. Great-grandfather Fong chatted about all sorts of firearms, fighter jets, submarine armor, and other topics. The other old fellas present felt their hearts itch as they listened. Actually, from the looks of it, Feng Zhao's donation still had its benefits. Feng Zhao certification applications would surely be approved quickly and given preferential treatment. Great-grandfather Fong beamed. He didn't know what Feng Zhao said, but great-grandfather Fong nodded his head repeatedly. You didn't do wrong. So what if you donated? Bounty is a huge sum that comes easily, and we won't be able to use it properly. Being able to get those certifications is worth it. Great-grandfather Fong was practically a moron. In any case, he would nod his head vigorously in agreement with whatever Feng Zhao said. As for the bounty, he would just treat it as money that came with the strong winds and was blown away by the strong winds. Take more photos. Oh, it seems like I can't just randomly take photos now. All right, I can rest assured knowing that you didn't suffer over there. Great-grandfather Fong reluctantly handed the communications device to great-grandmother Fong after he finished speaking. He then turned around to find someone to share Feng Zhao's accomplishments with. Oldly, let me tell you guys. Where is everyone? There had been a group of people sitting in the living room a moment ago, but now, not a single one of them had disappeared. Chapter 401. Friday Afternoon Update 4, Future Heavenly King, please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. In the night sky, the spaceport outside Planet Boo that was currently under construction flickered like a star. The sea of stars, dreams, and the future. Feng Zhao added a star to a certain page in his notebook. On the day he left Planet Boo, a military reporter had looked for him and asked if a portion of his exam results could be made public. Feng Zhao thought about it and agreed. A few days later, the official military media published a form on their social media platform. On it was a list of Feng Zhao's examination results during his time on Planet Boo's variety show shoot. The military wanted to promote Feng Zhao as a role model, so after the official media released the news, many authoritative media outlets rushed to forward it. Before Feng Zhao had even returned, the news had already been hyped up. On that form were a series of permits granted by Boo Base. There were many types of fighter jets, armored vehicles, and submarines. There were permits that could fly in the sky, dive in the sea, and run on land. Military enthusiasts were busy popularizing science to the audience, analyzing the models involved, technology, and the level of armed forces behind them. Many people were dumbfounded by the shock. Although I don't really understand it, it sounds very advanced. He passed with full honors. He's also a top student. What tyrant? That's called a prodigy. Those permits aren't something that can be obtained just by burying one's head in theory. One's learning ability, mental fortitude, and so on all have to surpass the average person. It's already difficult for others to obtain even one, but he obtained all of these while participating in variety shows. He would also be considered a special grade in the military. Special grade. My impression of Fang Zhao is that of a refined young artist. The one above, what gives you the misconception that Fang Zhao is refined? Is it the inhuman-level berserk point-sweeping video that is still at the top of the gaming forums? Or is it the live broadcast of Fang Zhao's military service that doesn't lose out to the local garrison? Or perhaps it was the style of his music that people had begun to forget about, such as Get Up High from Sleep? How is he refined? Great-grandfather Fang, who was happily scrolling through the comments section of the Yanbei retirement facility, was infuriated when he saw this. How is my little Zhao not refined? However, great-grandfather Fang's defense was too weak and didn't change the direction of the online masses' thinking. Then the question is, why didn't he enter the military and instead dabble in the arts? Someone asked. I'm just curious. Why are the last 2 lines censored? The last 2 lines of the list in the military newspaper were covered up. Only Fang Zhao's examination results and the permit issued by Bu Base were revealed. Probably because some things are still under a confidentiality period. I strongly suspect that the proof Fang Zhao obtained is even more than what was published in the military newspaper. There are also artists in the military. Will Fang Zhao head in that direction in the future? I heard through the grapevine that there are already many units intending to specially recruit Fang Zhao. Wasn't that guy who always did variety shows a few years ago specially recruited into the military? Last month, it was even exposed that he misused military funds. However, if it was Fang Zhao, I wouldn't be worried. Isn't that obvious? He has already donated tens of billions. Why would he care about that bit of military funds? Looking at Fang Zhao's current momentum, he has been promoted as a model by the higher-ups. If he is really specially recruited in the future, he will definitely be promoted quickly. When he completed his military service and transferred to reserve duty, an exception was made and he was promoted 1 rank. When the time comes, I reckon he will be promoted again. I have long heard that artists in the military are promoted quickly. They are different from combat troops. It is easy for them to render meritorious services and receive rewards. Perhaps Fang Zhao will be promoted to general before he turns 50. A soldier who doesn't want to be a general isn't a good artist. If I was Fang Zhao, I would definitely accept the special recruitment. That is a general. According to the current regulations, it is difficult for artists to have any real authority. What's the use of not having any authority? It is fine as long as there is honor and treatment. It is fine even if there is no authority. The internet was guessing whether Fang Zhao would be specially recruited into the military. Huangzhou, Imo Lang's residence. The usually peaceful and tranquil atmosphere was disrupted by an explosive roar. You all better give up on that idea. That is a talent that we have painstakingly nurtured. In the future, he will walk even further on the path of art. I don't care about that place of yours. Imo Lang was so angry that his beard was trembling non-stop as he spoke into his communications device. The person on the other end of the line was worried that he would anger this treasured artist badly when he saw Imo Lang's agitated mood and hurriedly explained. However, the more he explained, the angrier Imo Lang got. After all this talk, isn't it just to snatch people? No way. Imo Lang didn't wait for the other party to continue persuading him before cutting off the signal. At this age, Imo Lang had seen his fair share of situations. If Fang Zhao was specially recruited into those units, the academic atmosphere would surely be inferior to here. If he was led astray, he would have to attend to all sorts of social engagements and missions all day. There would be many people fighting openly and covertly for promotions. Imo Lang wouldn't let Fang Zhao go there and delay his precious artistic life. Imo Lang took a deep breath and paced a few rounds. This won't do. I need to read a few theses to calm down. Mo Lang's assistant hurriedly sent over the 2 theses and a new composition. Only then did Mo Lang's expression improve a little. When Fang Zhao returns, I will get him to start preparing for his graduation concert. Don't let other matters distract him. Mo Lang had this plan and contacted a few other people. After this wave of publicity by the military media, he would suppress this news. He didn't wish for news about Fang Zhao to be all over the internet when he returned. There were also some people who felt that Mo Lang's actions were superfluous. There was so much news on the internet every day. It was already pretty good if this sort of publicity news could last for 2 days. How could they expect him to maintain his popularity? Another 2 days later, the news about Fang Zhao's achievements on Planet Boo faded. Mo Lang was very happy. However, his happiness didn't last long. That piece of news from the military media was dug up on the internet once again, and its popularity soared. What's going on? Mo Lang was stunned. Mother Planet, outer spaceport. Fang Zhao and his entourage and the program team had finally returned. However, they needed to undergo immigration and quarantine at the outer spaceport and would have to stay for a short period of time. Nobody in the program team had any complaints, including Zero. They weren't impatient. In any case, they already had internet access here. With internet and food, it was fine even if they had to stay for another month. The fuck? Fang Zhao, you were trending on social media platforms again. Wu Tianhao was browsing through the news. He had originally wanted to show off his handsome photo, but he hadn't expected to see his name at the top of the trending list the moment he logged into his account. Nanfeng was also abnormally excited. He had also seen it, and it wasn't any later than Wu Tianhao. However, he didn't dare believe it. He carefully gathered some information and asked around before walking over to explain to Fang Zhao. Boss, the Star Cup just ended recently. On the favorite celebrity rankings that they created, you were ranked first. Star Cup was a global extracurricular academic, technological, and entrepreneurial competition jointly organized by the Interplanetary Fund, the Global Association for Science and Technology, the Ministry of Education, and top institutions of higher learning in various continents. The name originated from the father of spaceships, Master Hung Xian. In his later years, Master Hung Xian had taken out a portion of his assets and established the Star Cup. When it was first established, Master Hung Xian had said this: first place, I'll give. Profits, I'll give. Right here, come and take it if you have the ability. Star Cup was a top-notch challenge competition for the entire world's secondary school students. It was also known as the gathering place for geniuses. It was held once every 3 years, and every year at this time, all the renowned universities and large corporations would gather here to snatch people. Those that couldn't be snatched away would be reserved first. Some students who had made a name for themselves in the Star Cup Challenge competition had already been reserved by the top 100 corporations in the world before they had even stepped foot into university. It could be said that those who could participate in Star Cup were all elites. Those who could fight till the end were the elites of the elites. In certain aspects, they were considered genius-level students. And after Star Cup, there would be a celebratory party. According to the requirements of the students participating in the Star Cup Challenge competition, celebrities would be invited to the celebratory party. This was the norm. Who said that geniuses couldn't chase after celebrities? And the current voting rankings were derived from this. Only students who had participated in the Star Cup Challenge competition and passed the preliminaries had the right to vote. This couldn't be faked. Up until now, Fang Zhao was ranked first on the voting rankings. Nanfeng looked at Fang Zhao's expression and continued. According to the norm, invited celebrities have to perform at the celebratory party. Boss, you have to be mentally prepared. Speaking in a trite tone. Cough, I'm late. There will be more on Saturday night. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.